Hey everyone, welcome to Firescale Audiobooks. If you enjoy the audiobooks, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. If you'd like to support us further, consider becoming a Patreon member. As a member, you'll gain the ability to request the next part of a novel audiobook I've uploaded, depending on your Patreon tier.
The draconic kingdom that was situated at the center of the beast world was the kingdom that commanded the most power. With the mythical race of dragons at the forefront, the kingdom prospered and took the lead in erecting a stronghold that withstood the test of time for multiple millennia. In the kingdom, there were multiple floating cities where powerful dragons resided, ruling over the masses of the common beasts below them. Their power boasted such unshakable belief that the day they fell became the most shocking thing for the beings of the beast world to hear. The invasion of demons began abruptly, with multiple demon kings descending down in areas not too far from the draconic kingdom. They were somehow equipped with all the knowledge of the beast world as they began waging war right away, causing the battalions of black dragons that protected the kingdom to move against them. The demon kings that led hordes of demonic forces had terrible power, using abyss magic and unique skills that stood toe-to-toe against the strength of dragons. The war was brutal, causing the other mythical kingdoms of beasts to activate their forces and prepare to reinforce the draconic kingdom. This was when a huge change occurred. The daughter of the dragon king that was fighting in the front lines was defeated and captured. This humiliation caused the dragon king to go mad as he prepared for a war of mutual destruction with the demons. But the demons began pulling their forces out of the kingdom at this instant, calling for a momentary truce. They called upon the Dragon King to stop the war that was causing both sides to lose many of their forces and leverage the life of his daughter to call for an assembly of discussion of how both sides could coexist. The Dragon King naturally knew this wasn't possible, but his dear daughter's life obscured his judgment. His love for her was so deep that he ignored all the wisdom and logic he had and called upon his forces to attend this assembly. Even with love blinding him, he still didn't act rashly and moved together with the powerful regiments of black dragons as his protection. The assembly was set on a grassy plain where the two forces faced one another and the leaders moved to discuss. Of course, the only thing they faced was betrayal. But this was the wickedness of the demons. As the Dragon King was approaching the tent placed in the middle of the opposing forces, he was presented with the sight of his daughter being humiliated and then watched as she was beheaded right after. The Demon King doing this was one that hadn't appeared in the battles previously. He had newly descended down into the ranks of demon kings that were present in the beast world. He was ranked 32nd, the demon of Lust, one of the 7 deadly sins, Demon King Asmodeus. With an ultimate skill that granted him glimpses of the future, he fought against the maddened Dragon King and brought him down. The ruthlessness of demons was seen firsthand as they played with emotions and sought destruction. After the fall of the Dragon King, the rest of the forces went down like dominoes, and the demon forces claimed the Draconic Kingdom. There was one thing that remained a secret from the outcome of this war though. Whether through means of illusion or abyss magic, nobles from other kingdoms were able to see the daughter of the Dragon King alive and well. Spies observed a figure that looked just like her standing beside Asmodeus as he led his forces to take over the Draconic Kingdom. The figure held the same face of the Dragon Princess, but it was dressed lasciviously with 2 horns growing atop its head. The forces believed that a betrayal had taken place and was the ultimate cause of the downfall of the Draconic Kingdom. This increased the mythical beast's apprehension of the terrible magic that the demons wielded, and they chose to prepare on all fronts for the war that would undoubtedly break out after the demon forces' power consolidated around the Draconic Kingdom. They didn't want the same mind games that the demons played before to occur. They didn't want to see their loved ones humiliated or turned to betrayers. Forces began to be bolstered by powerful mercenaries that moved across the kingdoms in these uncertain times, as the demons waited to start an all-out war. The true terror of the demons isn't their hordes of demonic soldiers that fight relentlessly. It is the mysterious, unique, and ultimate skills that they possess. Skills that show extreme effectiveness even when matched by the most powerful beings in this world. Princess Adelaide took a sip of a red drink as she finished her story. More than an hour had passed as the drinks and food on the table were emptied, with the man standing opposite her listening with rapt attention while devouring the meals around him. His eyes seemed to be blazing with fire as a few words escaped his lips. Unique and ultimate skills. There was a sense of excitement on Noah's face as he pondered what he just heard. He focused on Princess Adelaide and said, "What are the movements of demons against the Frozen Kingdom currently?" The demons are moving their forces and dividing them across all kingdoms, slowing down their advances quite a bit. From the information I have collected so far, only a single demon king has been leading his forces towards this kingdom. Hesitation appeared on the princess' face as she continued with her next words. I am also keeping watch of suspicious movements in the kingdom. This isn't based on any conclusive information, but from the use of my skill that tells me who to look out for. A silence pervaded the room as both people were absorbed in their own thoughts. A clear voice rang out from Noah's side. "But let's say we have this cooperation between the two of us. You believe I hold the key to your successful future, and I have my own aims. What will be the first move of this mutual cooperation?" A small smile came on as opposed to the normally icy expression on Princess Adelaide's face as a relieved reply came. "We have to give you a starting position to stand on that would allow you to be next to me with no questions. How do you feel about taking the command position of my royal guards?" It was the calm before the storm as many beings moved their forces around and prepared for the incoming collisions. On the neglected kingdom that had a single demon king making its way towards it, a single event had occurred that would have tremendous consequences. Schemes continued to be created as battles of wits and of strength continued to be carried out. But in the face of ultimate power, who would come out on top? No. It was a simple small word that carried a lot of meaning. I observed the surprise of the princess in front of me as her lips formed a round O and I further clarified. I've learned a few things these past weeks that made me realize being on the spotlight isn't necessarily a good thing. Our cooperation can definitely be established, but I'll be supporting you behind the shadows. Calmness returned on her face as she heard this, and I thought about all the things we discussed today. There were many ways I could go about this new development. Well, you may be right. I was going to see if you would join the competition that decides who will be replacing a retiring guard, but to create an identity for you covertly would be even easier. I recalled the veiled in black woman that called herself Knight as the ideas I had came into place. I asked her about the positions of all her different forces and found out that she had a secret division of people protecting her called Shadow Guards. Instead of publicly joining her and becoming her guard captain, I chose to act as one of the figures of her hidden department. I heard her cold voice that held a tinge of allure in it ring out after deciding this. Working as one of the Shadow Guards would mean you would be staying very close to me in the castle, perhaps just separated by a thin wall for you to act whenever the need arises. My eyes shrunk into thin slits as I heard this, and the discussion continued. One of her golden rings shone again as a black material appeared on the table. I ended up receiving a black suit that tightly hugged my body, visibly showing the steeled muscles all over once I wore it. The black suit was a rank S item that had the innate trait of blending into the shadows, being great for assassinations and the like. As soon as you filled it with energy, your figure would quickly disappear. With the addition of the few hiding skills I could activate at all times, I was skeptical whether someone of epic rank would be able to notice me if I didn't want them to. For the latter half of the night, I told the princess that I had to think about everything as she excused herself into another room of the white courtyard, telling me to call out if I needed anything. After talking in the presence of this person for so long, I let out a relaxing breath while going over the entire meeting. I was just met with one of the best possible scenarios by quickly getting in contact with someone of high standard, and it was an extremely high standard as things stood right now. All she wanted and expected of me was my presence, that I would be the person to protect her against threats she is confident are approaching through the use of her unique skill. When I thought about the idea of unique skills and the demon's ultimate skills she had mentioned, I couldn't help but feel excited at the possibility of getting them for myself. I would take it slow though, and focus on the immediate goals I have currently. Firstly, it was matching and taking down the epic ranked beast I ran from at the Sky Peak Nest. To do this, I had to continue raising the proficiency of rank S skills, as well as carry out combinations of skills that have met the requirements. On top of the few rank S skills I was able to obtain from my recent trip, I was able to take down even more rank A bosses that gave me many rank A items and skills. Putting together the rank A skills I received before leaving the Empire, I had a few additions that were already being used. Healing Light, Lion's Roar, Water Barrier, Pierce, Executor's Speed, Sense Heat Source, and Silent Communication. All the ones I learnt were active skills that would become passive through the use of my nearly endless mana. For the offensive skills, I was putting more focus in raising the ones that were currently at rank S, while still bringing up the remaining offensive rank A skills that neared 100 proficiency. It felt like I was already spreading my focus on too many things, and I had to be sure I was going in the right direction as time passed. As for skills rank B or lower, there were too many to count, and I would only choose a few that I saw were compatible with rank B skills like Eagle Eyes, and a few others that I still actively use so that I could raise their ranks later. I was setting my sights on higher places as my rank S skills continued to increase and deserved even more attention with how destructive they were. Currently, I was sitting alone in the room absorbing the rank S cores so that I could max my attributes to 350. With how many cores I currently had in hand, reaching it should not be a problem. Testing skill combination, I was able to produce a few more rank B+ skills that didn't need mentioning the way they currently were, and would only show some effectiveness after I combine them later to produce some decent rank A hiding, defensive, and support skills. This process would only repeat itself and produce bulks of rank A+ skills that I will be able to make into rank S as time passed. Since I had some time and didn't want to play with death testing the epic ranked beast that I wasn't sure if it had gone back to the inner parts of Sky Peak Nest or still patrolling in the perimeter, I can use the time I have waiting for the skill proficiency to rise while getting to know this frozen kingdom I had plans for. I'll start with the princess whose face always seemed cold, but the voice betrayed the expectation and excitement when she talked to me. The night passed with me monitoring the many skills I was activating, while also spamming skills like Saint's Phantom that didn't shine with outrageous effects to continuously increase proficiency. It would be a sleepless night, but my body that continued to grow stronger through absorbing essence and the multitude of skills would not be burdened in any way. When morning came, the princess showed herself in a new veil that was light blue. The black-clothed knight was besides her as she told me today would be the day of the competition amongst a few rank S mercenaries and adventurers to decide who would be joining as one of her new guards. We stepped out of the building called the White Courtyard as the figures of Knight and I became transparent. Knight was one of the few shadow guards that would keep close proximity with the princess, with a few other ones similar to her stationed all over the snowy peak ready to reinforce the guards that escorted her around if anything were to happen. I wasn't sure if this could be considered paranoia on the princess's side as she was being this careful even on her own peak that she controlled, but maybe I could learn a thing or two about going to extremes to stay safe. I would observe the ways of this kingdom and its people before I cement myself into an unshakable position to lead them against the demons that were on their way. A grand occasion was taking place on the snowy peak of the frozen kingdom. A new royal guard was about to be appointed, and the selection would take place in the form of combat. All of those that deemed themselves worthy and had sufficient status climbed the long bridge into the luxurious world atop the snowy peak. Grandiose establishments were left behind as many nobles, adventurers, and mercenaries found themselves congregating in a large square field that had tiered seats in their surroundings. At the forefront, an elevated seating was present where the Ice Princess herself would be observing the match. Lower seating was present on the sides for merchants, adventurers, mercenaries, and anyone else with sufficient status to attend. Nobles would be seated on the opposite side of the princess observing the matches as well. An occasion like this would not normally draw such huge crowds, but it was the presence of the princess that forever wore a cold expression that people were waiting to see. When the new royal guard would be sworn in, there was a tradition of the veil that covered the entirety of Princess Adelaide's face to be gone for an instant. Many came just to be graced by this sight. I could see many figures congregating as I remained hidden in the far corners of the high seats that the princess was looking down from. My figure was fully transparent with the rank S equipment I recently received as well as the many hiding skills that nearly erased my existence from people's eyes. I could see the figure of Captain Reiner standing valiantly on the side of the people that would be competing, with his face showing an expression of confidence. Various types of foods and refreshments were being passed around by a collection of expertly dressed maids. I turned my attention from the sights of people into the surroundings as I enjoyed the peacefully rustling white-colored trees that symmetrically lined up this entire venue. One of the things that continued to surprise me in this kingdom was the different types of beauty you could see with their architecture and simple layouts of the various snowy and colorful trees. It continued to remind me just how different the world I was currently living in. Figures continued to fill in as discussions rose to their peak, before Princess Adelaide rose with her hand glistening in the air, bringing an abrupt silence. I had half of my attention placed on watching the skills that continued to rise in proficiency and combining the ones I could, with the other half of my attention on the events playing out in front of me. The rising of her hand signaled the beginning of the affair, as the people coordinating the event moved around to start the first match. At this point in time, though, rough winds blew out as something majestically appeared in the skies. The beast that just appeared perfectly fit the description of a griffin, with large outspread wings and a sharp beak that glistened in the light. Atop this mighty-looking beast was a dashingly handsome man accompanied by a woman that was letting out a crazy level of power. My focus fully shifted onto them as I felt the feeling of an epic-ranked individual once again. "My dear sister, you would hold such an event without inviting your loving brother?" In a playfully berating tone, the voice rang out from the figure as the griffin slowly landed near the elevated seats where we sat. Looking at the figure drifting up to the princess and matching it with the information I held, this would be the powerful crown prince that was currently set to become the next ruler of the Frozen Kingdom. He truly did have the strength to prance around as he did, with the only guard he brought along being epic-ranked. The terrifying guard's eyes observed everything in the surrounding, the gaze landing on Princess Adelaide's rankest aides that stood around her. The seemingly loving brother ascended the platform and came face to face with the princess, his arrival bringing with it a level of tension in the recently calm surroundings. His hand moved out and landed on the shoulders of the veiled princess with a light pat, and I observed a slight tremble occur on her figure. "That is no way to welcome your older brother. Come on, let's see if we can get a few words out of you today. How about, brother? It's nice to see you." "No? Oh well." The crown prince talked this way as the veiled princess remaining still, her covered face only blankly staring back at him. He smiled brightly at this response as if he had won something and turned errand to the mass of people around us. "Today is an auspicious day where our favorite princess will add another guard to her collection. Let us enjoy ourselves and watch the great matches unfold." Exclamations rose out as people matched the crown prince's enthusiasm, and two figures stepped into the square arena to start the first match. The dangerous epic-ranked woman stood behind a chair that was right beside the princess, where her old brother took his seat when the match started. Not a single word was traded between the siblings after this, as the platform we were standing on became filled with an uncomfortable air. I looked at this newly appeared crown prince and recalled the things Princess Adelaide mentioned the night before. Among the many things she brought up after we agreed on a mutual cooperation, the name of her older brother occupied much of the discussion. Crown Prince Aeneas, the royalty that controlled Summit Peak, as well as the frozen paradise that the youngest Prince Theodred occupied. The biggest thing she told me to keep in mind was to be careful of the rapidly changing face of this crown prince. The berating persona of an older brother was not in any way how the person was in the dark. He was a shrewd individual who had taken control of two peaks, with the princess losing the battle against him when it came to the frozen paradise that their younger brother occupied. The crown prince's hands had dug down deep and now controlled a majority of the businesses and commerce there, elevating his status even further and giving him increased wealth. She told me that if there was anyone to cause us trouble in the future, it would be him. She was much more guarded against him than even the demons that would eventually wage war on these lands. His figure let out peak rank S strength, similar to the princess, but the main worry was his epic-ranked woman that was guarding him with a fierce expression. My body remained veiled in the dark as I watched this crown prince and the ongoing matches below. Chapter 84, A Wolf in Sheep's Clothing. The hunger that was rising deep within me was quickly pushed down as I sat near my little sister. "My dear little Adelaide, How much longer do you think you will scurry around from my grasp? My face couldn't help but change when I recalled the cute fight you put up for the control of frozen paradise. You thought you had control over our little brother and could rope him to stand with you against me? Ha, naive, naive, naive. The exhilaration I felt while looking at that face that was normally frozen be filled with anger that day kept me up at night. That face. I want to see that same FUCNG face again. Furious emotions erupted out and occupied my mind. My fondness of this bitch was quickly replaced with hatred. She was the only one standing against me. Did she not know the things I was doing to keep the people of this kingdom safe? What gave her the courage to put up defenses against me? Even someone as powerful as an epic-ranked adventurer healed under me. I looked to the dark-haired woman that was releasing a powerful aura as the anger receded within me. The matches happening below us were inconsequential to me as my eyes kept trying to pierce the veiled figure of my pitiful little sister. No matter how many guards you add, no matter how smart you think you are, under absolute power, what can you do but falter? Just like this epic-ranked adventurer behind me. Just like the many that have kneeled before me. So will you. When that time comes, I will see just how much longer that frozen expression can remain on your face. I retained my calm as I thought about the brand new strength I would be gaining with the possible deals being made in closed doors. People feared the advent of demons in this world, but I see it as an opportunity. There were too many fools with rigid thinking running around, and this would cause the death of all of us. Things that were never possible could now be seen before me. Grand aspirations of domination would not just be fleeting dreams. As for those that stood in the way of my dreams, I sensed the uncomfortable figure beside me as a smile returned on my face. Keep on squirming, little lamb, for I will have you in my grasp soon enough. The fights were spectacular to look at, but it wasn't the thing that grabbed most of my attention. It was the demeanor of the prince that stood near the princess. The facial movements were imperceptible, but I continued to see him shift from glee to happiness to anger all in a span of a few minutes. My guard was fully up against this new figure as I continued to observe the matches. The strength of the combatants going head-to-head was great to look at, and it made me admire the way adventurers and mercenaries rose their strength in this world. The adventurers of this world began at rank F like many of the hunters in my world, and gradually increased their strength over time. You had adventurers who were blessed with powerful and unique skills early on, with some that would most likely rise to become exceptional adventurers that could even earn the title of hero. The strength of the beings in this world rose at a much slower rate than the awakened in my world, but they honed their strength through constant accumulation and experience. A low-ranking hunter would start their adventuring in small dungeons and spend months in there obtaining cores and increasing their strength. The skills they had would grow with them as they spent years using and learning them. The damage of an adventurer's C-ranked skill could be trained to be powerful enough to the level above if they continued to get stronger. This wasn't even mentioning the beasts that were the majority of beings in this world. There were many different bloodlines of beasts, and depending on your birth, you could quickly become strong or remain weak. An example was the race of mythical dragons that had control of and used to reside in the center of the continent. A newly born dragon had much more mana than many other beings, and as they aged they received innate skills of their species while also learning how to utilize essence to form other destructive skills. They were geniuses when it came to mana, and exceeded many other species in strength. This was also why their downfall shocked so many lesser races and made them treat the threat of demons as a possible world-ending calamity. But the dragons weren't the only mythical races in this world. Another source of their strength was the dungeons that lay all over the world. They were established for a long time with some new ones rarely appearing over time. One of the amazing things I found out about the dungeons in this world is that they granted a random skill to those that cleared it for the first time. So adventurers spent their lives traveling all over the world to amass more strength by clearing different types of dungeons to gain more skills on top of the ones they innately have and train themselves. Higher-ranked dungeons rarely granted skills of the same rank though, where a very low percentage existed of a party clearing an epic-ranked dungeon to actually get an epic-ranked skill. The established norm after hundreds of years was that the more people you delved into a dungeon with, it caused the reward to be split across everyone. So powerful heroes who could take on dungeons alone would be the ones to find themselves getting powerful skills of the same rank of dungeons they were clearing. But how could someone of rank S clear an equivalent dungeon alone? Even the most powerful epic ranked figures could rarely pull off taking down an epic ranked dungeon by themselves, and those that tried spent days to barely make it out with their lives. Thus, figures that could do this were very rare in history. A few matches went by as the people around the elevated platforms ate and drank, with the platform where the two siblings were sitting continuing to be an uncomfortable area of palpable tension and silence. I watched as Captain Reiner advanced forward valiantly, defeating two opponents without breaking a sweat. He wasn't joking when he said he was a peak rank S powerhouse. I was probably looking at the future guard that would be following the princess around in the future. I continued to combine skills while the matches were going, gaining new additions of rank A skills, and could even foresee the appearance of the first rank S plus skill. After spamming Saint's Phantom consecutively every single second for the entire past night, the skill neared 100 proficiency, and I wanted to combine it with all element resistance that had also been repetitively spammed and nearly reached 100 proficiency, both turning out to be compatible. These skills were relatively easy to raise as they didn't come with world-shattering effects when casted. Aside from this possible rank S plus skill, covert skills of lower rank like Dark Assassin were combined together to produce 3 new covert rank A skills: Shadow Escape, Illusory, and Chameleon Skin. These skills were also quickly activated, giving me increased confidence of even those at the epic rank not noticing me. The process of combination was only becoming faster and faster as I chose more skills that I could passively activate which were compatible with one another. My dream of overlapping myself with multiple powerful defensive skills was slowly coming to fruition as multiple rank B+ skills were combined. This provided me with new rank A defensive and support skills that were steeled muscles, hardened bones, wind armor, metal scales, tanzanite skin, yeti's fur, and finally, frigid armament. Almost all of the rank B skills I collected the week that I spent in the Empire before coming here, and ones gained from the Sky Peak nest were spent to produce this many compatible defense and support skills. There were so many that even I had trouble keeping track of all of them, and just continued to keep them active so that I could continue creating combinations of the next rank. Obtaining an epic ranked skill through skill combination might happen faster than I thought with how efficient I was when I put my nearly endless mana to full use with constant activation of skills. The only other skills that didn't really fit into a category but I had plans for nonetheless were Regal Archer's Eyes, which rose from Eagle Eyes, and a previously learnt rank B skill called Enhanced Acuity. I was enhancing my skills in such a systematic way that it almost seemed foreign to me, with this type of progress even giving me an excited scare. I wanted to grind my active offensive skills similar to the defense, covert, and support skills that I will just refer to as passive skills from now on since they act that way with my nearly endless mana. The memory of me grinding Fireball in a dungeon as I watched the proficiency numbers go up passed through my mind, and I shifted the plans to visit the dungeons of this world as my next plan of action. I could see an epic ranked skill being born in this pathway in at most 2 weeks, and it would be much less dangerous than battling an epic ranked beast while not fully prepared. The matches were quickly wrapped up as we were given a show of exciting battles between peak rank S powers. At the end of all of it, the valiant mercenary I knew as Captain Reiner took the title. He stood on the empty arena as cheers erupted all around for the new guard of Princess Adelaide. The Crown Prince rose up with a smiling face as he clapped, and turned towards his sister, as if he couldn't wait for the final part of the event to go underway. 2 guards led the about-to-be-initiated Reiner over to the elevated platform as he went to his knees and bowed down right before Princess Adelaide. A golden sword appeared on the hands of the princess as she rose up and her veil disappeared, her stunningly frozen face becoming visible for everyone to see. It was tradition to give at least this much respect to a newly initiated royal guard. The disappearing of the veil caused the awes of many of the people tiered in this exquisite square field, with Eliostful eyes being extremely clear on the faces of the nobles sitting opposite to us that I watched using Regal Archer's Eyes. But none of their eyes had as much emotion as I observed on Crown Prince Aeneas's eyes. They shone with a dangerous glint as he looked towards his sister. The golden sword in the hands of the princess lightly tapped the shoulders of Reiner, and he then lifted his hands up to accept the sword. Thus, a new royal guard had appeared. Cheers broke out as a veil covered the princess once more, and a fervent expression appeared on the new royal guard as he rose. "Ah, yet another pet in your collection, little sister. I can't wait to see how you make use of all of them." The crown prince made these his last words as his figure disappeared and reappeared atop his griffin, his epic-ranked guard following right after. Throughout the entire exchange and the few hours that passed during this guard selection, not even once had any words come out of Princess Adelaide's mouth. She looked to the retreating figure in the sky as I felt heavy emotions of rage almost spill out of her veiled figure. With the finishing of the event, we didn't stay with the celebrating mercenaries and nobles, the princess making her way to the carriage that was surrounded by many royal guards as we made our way to another location. I heard the familiar voice of the princess ring in my ears as I followed the procession in the skies. "We'll visit the castle where I can show you around for a bit." Her voice was much colder than the one I had been hearing all this time. I placed the crown prince high on my caution list after this as we moved to the center of Snowy Peak, where a luxurious castle manor laid itself out. Past the wide gates of the castle was a small garden of flowers and a water fountain in the center. It was a peacefully colorful sight as chirps of birds could be heard as they flew about. The carriage stopped in front of the manor entrance as the princess stepped out. The royal guards spread out to the surroundings as they took their positions around the manor, with one guard walking and talking closely with the newly initiated Captain Reiner that was looking enviously at the two guards that had access to enter the manor as their doors closed. With the covert rank as item and many hiding skills I had, I passed through the doors the same as the princess without any issues. The view inside the castle was even grander, with an enormous chandelier hanging in the ceiling as two sets of stairs ascend D to the second floor. The two guards that entered stayed at the bottom of each staircase as the princess made her way up, passing through a door that led to a large hallway. The door closed with a thud and Night revealed herself standing near the princess, with me deactivating some of the hiding skills and the veiled suit I had on. With a nod from the princess, Night moved forward and left the two of us walking across the hall. I know it may not seem like it, but my skill has confirmed it multiple times. My biggest enemy is my own older brother. I thought of the epic-ranked guard that was with him as I listened to this and asked. I saw the powerful guard that stood at the entrance of Snowy Peak. Is the guard he came with the one protecting Summit Peak? Sadly no, and this is a point where I fell behind. There is an epic-ranked guard protecting each of the 4 peaks. The guard he was bringing around was an adventure he found himself some time ago. His power continued to exceed mine after the addition of this one person. We walked through the halls of the manor as the princess told me more information about the 4 peaks of the Frozen Kingdom and the surrounding lands, not questioning for a second why I seemed to ask so many questions. I wanted to put my plans into place as I waited for my skills to continue rising in proficiency, as well as quickly rise the proficiency of my offensive rank S skills by delving into dungeons where secrecy would not be an issue. I want to go visit some of the dungeons in the surrounding areas to raise my strength a bit more after seeing the people you're up against. The princess turned to me with that same beautiful frozen face as I said this, and a barely visible smile appeared as she said, "Dungeons are a great way to go, and with how confident I am in my unique skill, I'm sure you aren't showing us your full power now. How about this? It's stifling to stay cooped up in this peak all this time, and I can't even recall the last time I went out of the kingdom. I don't know which part of the continent you hail from, but let me show you around the surrounding lands as you become more familiar with the dungeons and the people around here. With your strength, we shouldn't have anything to worry about." The girl continued to place complete confidence in her skill that apparently told her nothing would go wrong with me around. I thought about the idea and went along with it, thinking it would be nice to learn more about this world while getting to know the person who wanted my corporation so much. My passive skills continued to accumulate proficiency even now, so passing the time with a gorgeous lady while getting stronger by combining skills as the requirements were met was also not bad. I would also get the chance to enter the dungeons where I can spam the offensive rank S skills multiple times to raise their proficiency too, and for this I would go into the dungeon alone. Give me a few hours to send out some messages and put a few things together. We can leave early tomorrow morning while I gather the intelligence on the traits of surrounding dungeons you can go to. I nodded as the princess continued to show me around her castle manor. She seemed to gradually be getting back that cheerful voice that still didn't match her face, that didn't show much emotion the more she talked, as the memory of the older brother from today faded. The rest of the day was spent walking around the manor and being introduced to where I'd be staying. She didn't lie with her words from before. She really did show me a grand room right next to an even larger one where she'd be staying, where Knight seemed to have prepared everything after she separated from us earlier. The first ever S+ ranked skill also showed itself at this time with the addition of Saint's Phantom and All Element Resistance that reached the requirements. The new rank S+ skill was Saint's Return. A long-forgotten Saint's shadow stands behind you and your allies, constantly healing and providing heavy resistance against your enemies. The appearance of the first ever S+ skill made me feel a great achievement, while also reminding me of my rate of progress. The scary rate of progress confirmed that I would definitely be able to combine an epic ranked skill sometime soon. It was a much safer and possibly faster way to strengthen myself, making me think skill combination was just an extremely killer addition to my nearly endless mana that continued to make my speed even faster as time passed. The day ended like this. It was one of those peaceful days I hadn't had in a while, as I enjoyed the company of new people and became stronger through coal mining. The next morning, I found myself in a wide carriage that had the most comfortable seats that the cars in my world could not even compare. The princess was sitting opposite me in her veil as she looked out to the procession outside of the carriage. The carriage had a see-through function where the people inside could see the outside, as it was a clear window, but those outside only saw the luxuriously made materials of the ride that was now attached to a magnificent horse. We were just a few steps away from the bottom of the bridge leading to the snowy peak, as the carriage we were in was followed by many others like it, heading towards the large fortress wall in the distance. The princess seemed to have planned for many things, as I could see various merchants and mercenaries coming along with us, as well as the royal guards that were valiantly defending from threats atop their horses. I could see the figure of Reiner that made me chuckle, as he seemed to have transformed into the most perfect princess knight that continued to gaze at the carriage we were in frequently. There are a few counties and dukedoms in our surroundings that face harsher winters with less food, but each of them have their own specialties that we can trade with. I can already see that you plan to go delve into the dungeons alone, so I'll be keeping myself busy while you do that. I felt like I could see a smile behind that veil as the princess spoke without worry, the barriers surrounding this carriage making it so that no sounds came out. She wore a thick white dress with glistening fur on her shoulders, clothing that was commonly seen on the people in this kingdom that always lived in cold winters. I liked how the girl quickly caught on as we began the journey outside the frozen kingdom. The procession of carriages quickly made their way out of the large gates as they paved their way across snowy roads. I was comfortably sitting in the carriage with the princess that continued to describe the things we were seeing even without me asking. What? My little sister is making a trading trip? A surprising move had occurred from the little rat that continued to evade my traps. Making a trip to surrounding counties at this time? Don't you know that dangerous things can happen in the outside world where many bad people move around? A gleeful smile broke out of my face as I thought of this opportunity that would never have presented itself before. What had happened to cause you to do something this reckless, huh? Did the number of pitiful rank S guards around you really make you think you were fully protected? Let's see what is giving you this newfound courage to prance around without worry. The first place the procession of carriages stopped at was a place called Valen County. It took a few hours to get to this place as I learned more about the surrounding places near the Frozen Kingdom. Valen County was famous for its textiles and exquisite clothing, so the merchants in this procession would start doing business here first. The county had a few dungeons in its surroundings, with the highest one being the rank A dungeon, Floating Pentagons. The princess was planning to provide assistance and talk with the leader of this county as she tried to expand her influence. I would dive into this brand new dungeon for the first time and see just how different they were compared to the ones I have been used to. Before I left the carriage, Princess Adelaide handed me a small twinkling piece of metal. This works as a way to communicate if something ever pops up. If it blinks orange, then something serious that could endanger us might be occurring. If it glows red, well, hopefully it never comes to red. I accepted the piece of metal and told her not to worry too much. I would only spend a few hours in the dungeon. I could most likely clear it in under 20 minutes if it was anywhere near the dungeons I have been used to, but the goal was to enter this secret area where I would be alone to spam and raise my offensive rank S skills, so spending a few hours would be required. I let the princess leave the carriage first and activated my many hiding skills and added mana to activate the rank S veiled suit before stepping out myself. She was received by a plump man who began talking to her fervently while I went toward the dungeon she mentioned. The monolith of this dungeon was much bigger than the rank A ones I knew. There were dark doorways instead of squares to place your hands on, and I walked into one of these dark doorways, entering the first dungeon in this world. Floating pentagons was just as its name suggested. I was transported into a wide pentagon that was floating in the skies with complete darkness all around me. The only other points of light were 4 other pentagons similar to this one floating not too far away. Monsters began materializing on all the 4 pentagons but the one I was on, where 4 humanoid rhinos came to life and went towards the center of the pentagon that held a runic circle. The moment they stepped on this runic circle, they disappeared from their pentagon and all 4 monsters appeared in the middle of the pentagon I was in. I smiled at this new environment as I began by summoning my virulent abomination and started casting multiple offensive rank S skills. Thunder and molten flames roiled about, as well as flaming spears and blasts of cold that froze everything. The goal was to nonsensically spam every single skill continuously for the time to come until they reached 100 proficiency. I made sure to keep the bodies of monsters that continued to materialize from the 4 other pentagons and were transferred to the one I was standing in so that I could raise up and use profane eruption, too. From the first 4 humanoid rhinos, there came 8 more in a few minutes, then 16 more after that, and then 32. They kept on doubling as time passed, until 64 monsters kept on appearing every 10 minutes. If your hunting party couldn't handle the old ones fast enough, you would soon be overwhelmed and find yourself dead. I cleared them way before the new ones even came and continued to spam my skills as I watched the proficiency numbers rise in real time. Profane eruption was truly deadly, as the bodies of dead monsters exploded in a shower of poisonous gore that blasted anything near, creating even more corpses. I made sure to target the skill to activate on a single corpse each time and not explode all the corpses at once so that I could activate it multiple times. I had completely gone into an insane mode of constant spamming that I lost track of time, completely not realizing when a huge 10-meter tall colorful humanoid rhino that was most likely the boss become blasted as soon as it appeared by the surrounding skills. A large green crystal rose in the floating pentagon I was in while I felt a flow of information enter my brain. This was the random skill adventures received after clearing a dungeon for the first time in this world. The information entered my mind and instructed me on how to manipulate essence into an applicable form to cast the skill. Cooks, as long as it is activated, any dish you make will turn out delectable. I felt a ringing as this new skill appeared on my attribute panel as a rank A skill, but it was such a different skill from what I was usually used to that I laughed. But the purpose of me entering this dungeon wasn't for the clear skill I would receive for the first clear. Although the skill did seem interesting, and I would try it when the chance came. For now, I would spend the next few hours in this dungeon raising proficiencies and combining skills. As destructive skills continued to be cast all around me, new ones that met requirements were combined. The addition of Spear of Destiny and Combusting Spears gave the A+ ranked Relegator Spear. Pain Resistance and Ultra Regeneration produced the A+ ranked Immutable Regeneration that provided even faster regeneration while boosting my tolerance to pain. The new skill made me excited to try out. I also wanted to see just how great the healing effects of the S+ ranked Saint's Return was when applied to summons like the Virulent Abomination that always continued to be injured. If the resistance buff and healing was high enough, the summon might even be able to withstand attacks of that epic ranked beast while dealing its poisonous damage before being completely destroyed. I watched as the numbers rose for many of the skills, as well as another 2 particular S-rank offensive skills that were just a few digits away from being combined. Another skill that was rising slowly while active was summon virulent abomination, but I made sure to make full use of the deadly explosion that occurred when I casted it while it was already on the field to also raise the skill even faster with continuous casting. It seemed like it would be compatible with profane eruption, so that was one thing I was also actively rising. A few hours passed like this, until I felt mentally drained from continuing to multitask and repeat this process so much. I looked around the messy floating pentagons as well the blank darkness below in this dungeon that would be terrifying for anyone who didn't have the ability to fly. Hundreds of monsters had died, but not even their bodies remained with the constant use of profane eruption. I went out of the dungeon to find the procession of wagons fully ready to go, with Princess Adelaide being kept company by the same plump man that received her. I used silent communication to let her know I was done, and she said a few words to the plump count who nodded with vigor, with her heading towards the carriage right after. While remaining fully hidden from prying eyes, I was back in the carriage with the princess that seemed to have become exhausted after moving around these past 4 hours. "You took your time, Sir Osmont. Are you sure you're good to go to the next location right now?" From what she told me earlier, the next location would be the Shadow Dukedom with an S-rank dungeon nearby. It would take a few hours to get there, so I told her we were good to start the journey now. It neared evening, and I was able to serenely relax in the comfortable carriage after spending the last few hours incessantly casting skills. As we left behind the Valen County, we were surrounded by a scene of white as snow fell down even harder along the unpaved road. The white horses that were a tad bigger than ones I was normally used to did not seem bothered by the cold even one bit as they pulled the wagons and carriages forward. The royal guards occasionally became statues of snow as they continued to surround our carriage, with a few more protecting the wagons in the back. We hadn't come across anything so far, but the princess exercised great caution as usual. I was curious about her unique skill she mentioned before and asked her about it. The unique skill I hold is a special skill that can be passed down to those of your blood. My mother used the skill to become a powerful woman that commanded a great number of forces. Half the reason that my father was so successful as a king was due to her. She passed the unique skill down to me before she passed away years ago. A semblance of sorrow could be felt from her voice when she mentioned this. It seemed the possibility of skills being passed down occurred very rarely with strict conditions. She talked about the effects of the skill and how she made many of her plans based on it. I praised this girl's ability to get where she was at now depending on this one skill. I also didn't want to overinflate my ego, but it also allowed her to find someone like me. If her skill is to continue to be trusted, it means I will be making big moves in the future. To protect her from someone that was meant to become the next ruler of the Frozen Kingdom as well as the calamity of demons, she continues to mention. If her skill gave her confidence in passing through these events by keeping me close, then I smiled at the thought of the people I would be facing and the impact that would come from defeating them. I had to take things as they came though, and not play too much when I have yet to obtain an epic rank skill. I found the pressure of the possibility of my death weighing heavily on my shoulders the moment I thought about its impacts. This was why I had searched for and learned so many defensive skills, as keeping my life was the first and foremost important goal. The many rank A defensive skills were rising very well, and I would most likely be able to make them A+ in another few days. The tone in the carriage was light as the princess talked about the areas we were passing and the places surrounding the kingdom. The Valen County that we just passed was one of them, and we were heading towards the Shadow Dukedom right now. These places depended on the protection of the kingdom's forces, and there was much tension right now as the forces of demons neared the cold lands. People from Valen County and the Shadow Dukedom that were worried enough even made their way towards the Frozen Kingdom with all of their life savings to settle down there. In this dukedom, they have a specialty of different types of food that are unique to their location. I think you'll find it fun to spend the night there. The princess seemed to have caught on to how much I enjoyed the food here, and made it so that we would spend the night enjoying the delicacies of this new location. We arrived half an hour later to the dukedom that was lined by huge walls. The procession of carriages and wagons were welcomed with enthusiasm as they saw the banner on the carriage we were in. I could already see a huge monolith rising up in the dukedom with regal archer's eyes, and it was more than twice as huge as the rank A dungeons I had normally seen. This was the rank S dungeon, Waterworks, that I would dive into tomorrow. Both this one and the rank floating pentagons had the same black color on their monoliths, not adopting any of the usual blue, orange, or red I've been used to. It was a hectic night as the merchants and guards moved around to unload a few things, and the princess was led to a manor where she would spend the night. We came to an enclosed area in the dukedom where a small castle stood. After the introductions with a valiant knight that had a red mohawk who was the duke of this place, among the few words that the princess let out, food was one of them. The duke was surprised when he heard the request of the princess to provide her with even more different types of delicacies than the ones they had prepared, and he agreed nonetheless. He knew the princess preferred to spend her time alone, so he didn't intrude too much, leaving after sucking up to her as much as he could. Guards were placed where they were needed as the doors to the small manor closed, and I finally lifted the effects of a few skills as well as the rank S veiled suit. Please help yourself. I know you must be tired from delving into the dungeon and listening to me talk the entire day. The princess said this as night flashed by not too far away and took her position outside the door of the room we were in. I was courteous and allowed the princess to sit down on the extravagant seats first before we enjoyed the delicacies of the Shadow Dukedom. It would be a nice ending to this eventful day as I waited to combine a large number of skills tomorrow, and why morning began with abrupt knocks waking me up from the comfortable bed I was in. I didn't necessarily need sleep with my maxed rank S attributes and many skills that now became passive, but I always felt rejuvenated whenever I had a decent sleep. I groggily said come in while rising up from the bed where the silk sheets drifted down. The door opened to a blue-haired girl who seemed to have a semblance of worry on her eyes. She came to a stop as she saw my NED upper half on the bed and turned away as I became surprised at this type of reaction I never would have expected from someone like her. I equipped my body armor and asked, "What happened?" There shouldn't have been anything that went wrong with just a few hours passing. I was even patiently waiting to combine more skills this morning before diving in the dungeon here. Something that I didn't completely expect has occurred. She turned back and spoke in a serious tone as she faced me once more. Before we left, I made a few shadow guards stay behind to monitor the forces of the Crown Prince in the case of any suspicious movements. I thought there was a possibility he might try something fishy once news of me traveling to the surrounding counties and dukedoms reached him, but I never expected him to make such a bold move. I was up with full attention as she said this, and I asked her, "What exactly did you find out?" The shadow guards followed a collection of mercenaries working under the Crown Prince as they left the kingdom. Only the two of them followed to see if this would lead to something while others remained in the kingdom to continue monitoring. The two shadow guards that followed those mercenaries closely found them heading in the same direction we are. This doesn't seem too bad? I waited for her to continue as it seemed she liked holding the best things for last. Among the mercenaries they observed was the figure of the woman that was with the Crown Prince a few days ago. Now, with these words I finally became serious. An epic-ranked individual was involved? What's their plan here? Surely your own brother isn't sending people to take your life. Ha! A light laugh escaped from her lips for the first time since I met her, and she said, "It's not my life that he wants. I've seen the way he's looked at me my entire life while I grew up. He's got a twisted mind, and I don't know what plans he's created from it." I thought about this possible new threat and my own level of power currently. Between beasts and humans, beasts of the same rank were always more powerful. Would this be applicable to the adventure that supposedly was heading towards us? I then looked through the many skills I had brought up recently, as well as the ones ready for combination after this past night, and a smile broke out in my face. They won't be making a move while we're in this dukedom, will they? No, they will most likely put up an ambush in the snowy roads with low visibility when we leave this place. The plan in my mind fully formed as this was confirmed. Great. We'll head out in a few days to clash with these people. For now, let's continue to enjoy the time in this dukedom. A few days would be enough for me to get much stronger through combinations and loot. After all of this was completed, I even had a chance to gain another epic-ranked skill from someone that wished me harm? Ha, I couldn't wait. The calm returned on the face of the princess as she saw my own face that had no worry, and nodded her affirmation. You plan to head to the dungeon now? As soon as we grab some food, it's going to be a grueling few days of grinding for me. Grinding? The term threw her off and I told her not to worry as we stepped out. The plan would be simple for the next few days. Constantly grind and combine skills while gaining new ones from this rank S dungeon, Waterworks. This would actually be the first S rank dungeon I dive in, as all the ones I came across previously had dungeon breaks right after. After grabbing some food, I covertly made my way over to the dark monolith. The hazy doorways were striking, the blackness inviting and drawing you in. Without wasting a minute, I entered my first rank S dungeon in this world. Waterworks was a particularly interesting dungeon as the first floor I appeared in had a few patches of land, with water surrounding the floor for more than 2 times. My regal archer's eyes, that could see triple the distance that eagle's eye, could observe many movements on the water below. Zoom. Without a second passing, monsters flew out of the water with sparkling sharp teeth spread wide open to take a bite out of my figure standing on the small path of land. The beasts looked completely the same as sharks, just 4 meters large, but with the addition of wide wings on its sides. These were the famous monsters in this dungeon called winged shark. They could stay in the water as well as the air, and terrorized any adventurers that were not prepared. I had the goal of focusing on raising my rank S offensive skills as well as the rank of my one and only summon currently, so I began with those skills. With the shining of the circular rune, the ugly abomination came out with a loud scream as always. The winged sharks in the air found their small wings ripped apart as something much larger than them began to move. Tensrun was casted next as the figure of a golden saint with white hair appeared behind me. The hazy figure had a stern look on his face as white rays of light shot down towards me and the virulent abomination. The light brought about an invigorating feeling to my body as I felt energized and like nothing could possibly hurt me. The summon that had begun battling with the flying sharks found many parts of its body that were injured closing up quickly as it moved even faster. The next skills I began casting were Volcanic Eruption and Rage of the Thunder Monarch. I was excited to cast these even more as they would be reaching 100 proficiency in an hour or so. The first floor of this dungeon was cleared like this. The sharks were very aggressive and always dashed out of the water to attack. Even if they didn't though, the constant thunder that rained down in the water as well as the molten flames and gaseous heat made it easy to take all of them down. The moment any of them died, Profane Eruption came to play to cause even more mayhem. The Waterworks dungeon had 50 total floors, with the first 25 holding countless variations of winged shark S and the latter 25 holding the last boss room as well as another species of monsters. The fact that there were so many floors that provided a ton of monsters made the usage of Profane Eruption shoot through the roof and caused the proficiency to visibly rise over time. Hours passed by like this as I enjoyed the rising of numbers and combining of skills while terrorizing new species of monsters. Halfway through the 10th floor of Waterworks, Volcanic Eruption and Rage of the Thunder Monarch finally hit 100, and I was able to put the 2 skills in this skill combination tab that shone blue. The product of these 2 was the rank S plus skill. Devastation. The sky cracks as destructive lightning and flames from the depths of an unknown dimension search for your enemies. The first trial of this skill was particularly eye-opening. The moment it was casted, it seemed like the sky was unzipped as roiling thick ropes of purple lightning and red flames spread out to every single winged shark in the air, as well as the ones hidden below in the water. The destructive combination of lightning and heavy flames seemed as if they had their own consciousness as they searched for and blasted apart any beast they pierced into. 10 seconds, that was how long the skill lasted, but also the amount of time that cleared out the entirety of winged shark S in our surroundings, leaving the virulent summon standing blankly in the air looking for more enemies. The advent of devastation made my attacks overcome the efficiency of the fast-moving summon for the first time since it appeared, increasing the rate we progressed through the dungeon. On the 25th floor, the rank A skills that had been active all this time finally reached the requirements and were combined. Steeled muscles and hardened bones went together to provide Man of Steel. Wind armor and frigid armament produced the colorful dual-element armor. Metal scales and Yeti's fur produced Bestial hide. Tanzanite skin and earth armor went ahead to produce protection of the earth. This gave me 4 new rank A+ defensive skills that had their power nearing rank S, giving me even more confidence of having a sturdy enough defense to withstand attacks of someone of the epic rank. I would still continue to over-prepare though, as nothing wrong would come out from that. After passing through the 25th floor, we came across another type of monster in this dungeon. This time they were the terrifying combination of a humanoid fish, the famous siren. They had NED upper bodies where voluptuous masses of flesh were flinging around as their lower bodies were made of hard green scales. They had powerful attacks shooting out from their mouths as deadly sound waves and poison continued to fly out as they moved across the water. Well, they still didn't stand a chance against the virulent abomination that ripped them apart without reservation as well as devastation that searched out for them even when they dived underwater. Profane eruption caused them even more problems as the bodies of their friends exploded and left poisonous zones in the water that spread out. As they could not fly into their skies, they became even more pitiful than the winged shark-s from earlier floors. I continued to bulldoze through the dungeon in this manner, a multiple array of skills continuing to be casted as their proficiencies rose. Summon Virulent Abomination had already reached 100 as my fingers itched to combine it with the poisonous and powerful Profane Eruption, the moment more bodies of dead monsters continued to appear. I had already profaned more than a few thousand bodies just in this dungeon alone as more than 2 hours had passed while I went down waterworks. The dungeon's floors were extremely vast and wide, providing a vast array of monsters that made me very happy. With a few thousand more bodies to explode until I reached floor 50, I might be able to carry out the combination of the 2 skills in this dungeon run. Another 2 hours passed as I took out the screaming siren, and I found myself on the 50th floor where the boss resided. The floor was a wide expanse of water, without even a patch of land to stand on now. Adventurers usually came into this dungeon equipped with information and items that either allowed them to breathe underwater or walk on it, being fully prepared for many different situations before they came in. I went about it a whole different way by remaining in the air with the flight skill that continued to show extreme usefulness even now. I watched in the air as the ugliest beast I had seen in a while showed itself. I thought my abomination was ugly to look at, but the monstrosity rising up was something else. The boss of this rankest dungeon that was called Fish Monstrosity made its appearance. It was, as its name suggested, a monstrosity made up from multiple fish that seemed to still be alive and screaming as wails came out of various parts of its body. Its face was contorted in anger as it howled towards me, multiple water spears forming and making their way over. This beast was one that many adventurers had trouble with when looking at its hard defenses and powerful water element abilities. The maxed abomination that was at the height of its power swooped down to smash into the monstrosity as their deadly battle began. I let the water spears hone in on my position and strike my body, seeing just how effective the attacks of a peak rank S beast that needed multiple rank S adventures to take it down would stand against my many defensive skills as well as Saint's Return that continued to heal me and provide me resistance boosts consistently. The water spears seemed to have struck into a muddy wall as they didn't even get near enough to dent my armor, the many defensive skills that were either layered on top of my skin or in the form of colorful barriers stopping them right in their tracks, where they then dissolved into nothingness. I nodded in satisfaction while watching this, realizing that even if an epic rank were to land their attacks on me, they would at most injure me. But let's continue mulating more defenses. I eagerly looked to the battle between the 2 ugly beasts as the virulent abominations seemed to have the upper hand with the constant healing and buffs from Saint's Return. Every single injury it suffered closed in but an instant as the fish monstrosity continued to be injured with the noxious blasts it was releasing as well as its sharp claws. I finished the battle as I casted Devastation and watched the roiling thunder and flames rush out from the rift in the sky and pierce the body of the beast. Painful screams rung out as the beast withstood extreme heat and lightning, watching its body slowly become burned and destroyed. When the 10 seconds passed, only a mess of flesh was left behind as the monstrosity screamed pitifully. The summon ended the fight by digging into its body and releasing multiple noxious blasts from within. A similar scene to when I cleared the floating pentagons for the first time occurred, where a flow of information in the form a skill was placed in my mind, it was quickly absorbed and transformed into a skill that appeared on my panel. This time it was a rank S skill called Budding Farmer. You can become the best farmer in your region. In exchange for a large amount of mana, the skill allows you to change the essence in a surrounding field to promote the extreme growth of all plants. All the skills that I was receiving by clearing a dungeon for the first time in this world were non-combat skills that seemed to have their own special uses. I wasn't complaining as they seemed to be very interesting skills, so I would give the first one I received, Cook, and this one a try soon. From the knowledge I collected so far, the perk of gaining a skill when clearing a dungeon for the first time in this world was completely random. It was a completely different system from the dungeons that the demons used to descend to my world. I would see what type of skills I would continue receiving when I clear more dungeons of this world in the future. I went near the beast to get its loot similar to how I had been doing these past 49 floors as I collected more cores and a skill book into my storage pouch. I then rose higher and casted Profane Eruption, watching the large body of the beast cause a heavy explosion and give the last point from 99 to 100 for the skill. I excitedly looked at the two skills that were ready for combination as the summon was cancelled, and I placed Summon Virulent Abomination and Profane Eruption into the skill combination tab. The tab shone in a blue light as the process took even longer than when I combined the skills to receive Saint's Return. It finished in a few seconds, and the new rank S+ skill produced from this deadly combination was Summon Plaguebearer, an abomination of extreme evil that causes deadly plagues wherever it goes. The skills Poisonous Breath and Defiler are among its tools. My eyes shone with this combination as I itched to restart this dungeon and see just how deadly the summon had become. This will be Night's number 786 entry. A perplexing event has occurred recently that deserves to be recorded. My gracious lady gave me a command that allowed her to connect to a man we just recently observed. It was a peculiar man based on the details we collected. He seemed to have popped out from nowhere and landed in our kingdom, showing an average level of power, and yet catching the eye of the princess. We were still matching his characteristics with those of beings across the continent. As for why he caught the eyes of the princess, I have yet to find out. It is the continued behavior of the princess towards this man that continued to make me observe them even more though. Not to even mention how close she seems to be getting to him and allowing him to be that frank with her, let's just take a look at the past few days we spent in the Shadow Dukedom. After another one of my sisters informed her of another plot hatched by the royal wanker, the first thing she did was head to inform that man. She didn't discuss with us or with the royal guards on our plan of action. The plot currently afoot could be potentially dangerous for all of us, so I expected the princess to come up with one of her grand plans that would allow us to outwit the enemies and arrive back to our castle unharmed. But no such thing occurred. She simply went to discuss it with that man and came out, informing us to continue monitoring from a distance and to be sure that they do not catch on, that we will continue to spend our time in this place for a few days. This wholly surprised me and made me question the power of that man that made the princess disregard the power of an epic-ranked individual. It also made me somewhat down. Did the lady not need us anymore? The morning after we found out about the news of the impending attack that was waiting for us as soon as we left this dukedom, the man disappeared from my detection and didn't appear until the end of the day. I was happy to be back to spending time alone with the lady as she went about her work here, but was also curious about this man who could escape the perception of someone like me that was trained in this art. When he reappeared in the evening, he seemed to be in a good mood, and even went as far as to ask the princess to bring him some ingredients for food he wanted to cook. This was something I never expected, but I acted as instructed and brought in a variety of raw meats and vegetables to work with. He began cooking while seeming like a complete beginner, but the results were something completely unexpected. There was an appetizing smell in the air stemming from the food he made that I've never come across before. I couldn't help but overstep my boundaries when I saw the lady enjoy the delicacies, and shamefully accepted the offered food. The conclusion? Maybe this man wasn't too bad after all. A significant amount of time was still spent with the lady and the sir talking. I never knew what the two of them spent so much time discussing, as the lady had already asked me not to snoop in when she was alone with him. I still had many questions, but I knew the princess was careful in who she confided in, so I will wait until she can come to me again. On our second and third day in the Shadow Dukedom, the same pattern continued to repeat where he disappeared and reappeared, each time he came back seeming much more calm and confident. I wasn't dumb, and inferred opposable activity that this man was doing every day was most likely going down the famous waterworks dungeon by himself. I was shocked when I came to this conclusion, as the only people powerful enough to delve into S-ranked dungeons alone were either powerful heroes with unique skills or powerful adventures of the next rank. But maybe this would explain some of the many mysteries surrounding him, as well as the unexplainable savory food he has routinely been making. It was now the evening of the third day, and I can already smell that same aroma from before. I'll see if I can continue to overstep my boundaries and receive some more of those delicacies. Until then, a few days had passed while I continued to dive into my now favorite dungeon, Waterworks. The abundant amount of monsters and many floors allowed me to go all out testing the new skills that were already rising nicely. Both the newly combined rank S+ skills had reached the 30s in proficiency, and were taking their time even after I constantly spammed them these past 3 days. Maybe getting an epic rank skill in a few days was too far-fetched, and I might need another week or two as higher ranked skills took their time to rise. The one thing that I found to be helpful to my psyche after the constant grind of skills and killing monsters for so many hours was the new hobby I found myself doing. I count it as a blessing that I began doing this, as I felt like the only words passing through my mind was just this skill or that skill and which ones were next to combine. This new hobby was me using the skill to put a few things together. I wasn't doing anything special, only using my barely passable cooking that I had to learn when I was on my own. Yet the results were exceptional. Well, it was basically the skill doing what it described. I could confidently say that the things I made while was active was one of the best foods I had ever eaten. It beat the food I had when I first arrived in this world by a mile. This made me curious to try out the budding farmer skill too, as it probably holds even greater surprises. Aside from finding myself respite from the monotonous grinding so that I don't go crazy, I made new additions with skill combination, and received another 6 rank S skills as well as 3 items after continuously clearing the Waterworks dungeon. The new rank S skills were Flash, high-speed movement that allows your body to automatically evade enemy attacks. Phoenix Arrow, your bow momentarily releases inflamed arrows that carry the aura of a phoenix. Enfeeble, a terrible curse strikes your enemy, reducing their speed, damage, defense, and resistance. Aura of Belligerence, an aura of war surrounds you and your allies. Plus 200% damage. Shield Slam, your shield comes to life, targeting any enemies around you in a flurry of attacks. Obfuscation, your presence continues to thin out until the best detection skills cannot observe you. It was a great addition of powerful skills, where even ones that I doubted I would use like Shield Slam and Phoenix Arrow, I still learned them anyways. The newly obtained rank S items were Viridian Boots, Legion Armor, and Dull Trident. Besides the Trident, I could wear everything else. The new Legion Armor went on top of the rank S veiled suit with no issues, and the Viridian Boots vastly increased my speed. All of these new additions and skills made me confident to stand against the power of an epic rank skill without my life being snuffed in the next second. I would give myself another day before going out to clash with the mercenaries still waiting in ambush outside the snowy roads. It was now the morning of the 4th day in the Shadow Dukedom. Even with most of my time cooped up in the Waterworks dungeon, I was still able to spend some time watching the mundane and sometimes extraordinary lives of the people living here. They weren't too different from the masses that I was used to in the Frozen Kingdom, only looking slightly more impoverished as they had access to less food. I was standing next to a frozen field in one of the designated plots of land that were usually heavily protected. They treated the source of their food with this much importance. Princess Adelaide had mentioned that the vegetables growing in these fields were called white radishes. They were a strong plant that grew in the extremely cold conditions very well. But the soil of this dukedom and a few others around the Frozen Kingdom had been seeing reduced crop yield on lands that were normally fertile. I wanted to test the usefulness of budding farmer after the surprise that Cook brought me, so I would try the skill before I head out to clash with the strong attackers waiting for us. A lone princess was standing far behind me in another light blue dress, the cold winds not bothering her one bit. I could also feel the presence of night that I had recently felt like she was watching me just a tad bit too much. I raised my hand towards the small field that had a few hundred white radishes, growing and casted, budding farmer. Rough winds roiled about as the essence around the field condensed and visibly changed to a tinge of green that landed on the field. The green color shone for just a few seconds as changes on the plants began occurring. The somewhat dried, white radishes had their white leaves begin to extend and grow, with them sprouting from the ground so quickly that half of the body of the radishes could now be seen bunched together fighting for space. In the next minute, the field I casted the skill on had undergone a complete change, becoming vastly different from the surrounding fields. Sparkling and robust, white radishes now valiantly stood in the fields. The princess that couldn't contain her shocked expression even with her cold face went forward to pick one up as she continued to be surprised. It turns out the new vegetable that rapidly grew under the effect of budding farmer was twice as large as normal ones. Gears were turning in the mind of the princess as she began walking back and forth rapidly. This skill, just like the previous cook, had shown extravagant effects, especially the amazing economic use that budding farmer had. The princess had already started to look at me with her shining dark eyes as she realized the possible impact of something like this in these frozen lands. I casted the skill on a few more fields before leaving, with the princess letting me know she would come up with an excuse of being blessed with a unique skill that raised the land's fertility and increased the growth rate of produce. She would use this opportunity to expand her influence even further in this dukedom. This aligned with my current thoughts of remaining in the shadows while moving around, and the fact that whatever influence the princess continued to amass in the future would also become mine. I confirmed this as I continued to spend my time with her, affirming her claims of her providing me with whatever I wanted. The time for me to take what I really wanted would come soon enough. With the testing of the non-standard skills I received from the first clears of this world's dungeon done, I moved on to the next phase that I was excited about. A collection of mercenaries with an epic-ranked powerhouse in their midst had been patiently waiting for us in snowy lands. I didn't want them to wait much longer as the last combination of skills met the standards I set for myself before. These past 4 days, after the constant activation of the skills, I was able to combine the rank A+ defensive skills of Man of Steel and Protection of the Earth to bring out the S-ranked Rune of Defense and archaic rune spreads throughout your body. Plus 200% defense. Dual element armor and Astral Hide produced dragon scales. Your body is surrounded by defenses that are meant for the highest beings. In addition to the defensive skills, the covert rank A skills were also able to become A+, with Obscure and Shadow Escape becoming Abstruse Cover. Illusory and Chameleon Skin came together to produce Barrier of Illusion. With the increased confidence of these new skills, I would move out today to see the power of someone of the next level once again. The previous time I was matched against 2 beings of a higher level, with me becoming gravely injured where even a limb was lost. I was going to be careful enough that even with confidence in the many skills I had active, such a scene would not make its appearance again. The information we continued to receive from the shadow guards keeping track of the mercenaries set to ambush us was that they were camped near the only pathway leading out of the Shadow Dukedom. They wanted to corner the caravan the princess was leading on the only path that could be taken. This also meant that I knew where they were, and they had no idea I would be coming. A smile crept onto my lips as I observed the procession of carriages and wagons ready to move out of the dukedom. I would be making the move first, and meeting the attackers before this procession even reached that position. The princess was staring in the air with an expectant expression on her frozen face as she waited for me to return. I flew out of the dukedom with vigor, looking forward to the clash that would undoubtedly provide me with an amazing skill of the next rank. In a cold and blistering environment with heavy snow falling, a group of people were angrily fanning the flames in a small makeshift hideout they created. Their bodies were extremely powerful, with most of them at rank S and one even being epic ranked. But after constantly facing the cold these past few days with their targets not appearing, their defenses continued to wane. A group was tiered together as they talked in hushed tones while looking towards a figure that stood in the stormy cold outside with heavy armor plastered over her body. The cold didn't seem to bother her in the least as her body emanated a level of power that kept the ice elements at bay. "Hey, do you think we can at least tear the veil off after we capture her?" "Huh, only if you want to spend the rest of life being tortured. Keep to the assignment details. Our task is to handle the guards and destroy the wagons. We leave the main target to the commander." I know. It's just hard not to think about it after you've seen her face once you know. Tisk, focus on the mission. Visit a brothel after this if you need to, but don't let your stupidity cause your death. We act as soon as we see that woman's caravan. Flames crackled as the snow fell. Not too far from this group, a flying figure was meeting with someone that was keeping watch of these rowdy mercenaries without their knowledge. The figure's eyes honed in at the location of the collection of mercenaries, his presence so thin that even the falling snow passed through him. A hunter had found its prey. Noah Osmont, occupation, hunter. Vitality, 370. Focus. Strength, 380. Skills, F, C, B, F. Flights 100, Guardian's Light 100, Instant Transfer 100. Infernal Purge 100, Arc Lightning 100, Area Expansion 22, Pain Resistance 100, Recorder 100, Language Comprehension 100, Healing Light 100, Lion's Roar 23, Water Barrier 100, Pierce 100, Executor's Speed 100, Sense Heat Source 100, Silent Communication 55, Regal Archer's Eyes 66, Cook 33, A+. Arctic Zone 100, Relegator's Spirits 23, Immutable Regeneration 100, Abstruse Cover 2, Barrier of Illusion 2. S. Protection of the Wounded 100, Flash 11, Aura of Belligerence 23, Enfeeble 11, Phoenix Arrow 1, Shield Slam 1, Obfuscation 33, Rune of Defense 2, Dragon Scales 2, Budding Farmer 8. S+. Saints Returned 41, Devastation 45, Plague Bearers 39. Equipment, 3x Bearing of Storage, A Ring of Storage, S Storage Pouch, S Veiled Suit, S Legion Armor, S Viridian Boots. I enjoyed the winter storm that further obscured the view as my figure silently stood in the air. I looked down towards an individual who was blatantly releasing their dangerous aura without care. A few tents were tiered under the shade of trees, with this figure standing alone outside and staring blankly towards the path leading to the Shadow Dukedom. I focused as I prepared to move against this power of the next rank. I put everything aside as I looked to these people I would be embroiled in a battle with. I didn't know them, and they didn't know me. But they wanted to harm someone I had plans for, so I would steel my heart and fight. My figure was fully hidden with multiple skills as well as the veiled suit, making sure nobody could see me coming. Even though I was confident in the defensive skills, it didn't mean I would have to be reckless. I would attack while still hidden in the dark. I counted 1 epic ranked mercenary and 9 S ranks. My focus would mostly be placed on the most powerful one. I breathed out as I prepared for the oncoming battle. I started off with a small welcome of multiple casts of devastation. Rifts in space opened up as wriggling destructive pillars of lightning and molten flames D their way towards the enemy. Barely a second passed before the mercenary reacted and took up a stance. A wild look appeared on the mercenary's face the moment she saw the rifts opening up as her body began to shine golden. "Ya!" With a shout, a golden bell formed the moment the skills D towards her. Boom! Pandemonium ensued as the attacks connected, the golden light shining strongly and holding on as the nearby rank S mercenaries were blown away. The epic ranked mercenary looked around the ensuing destruction to find her attacker, but she was met with a dark aura plaguing her body as Enfeeble was casted. The spell ignored her defenses as it struck her and weakened the golden bell she had erected, causing the attacks from devastation to connect. I began feeling the exhilaration of conducting the battle in the dark as the essence around the mercenary roiled. A spectacular skill was being casted from her. The damage from devastation was pushed away as a transparent figure began forming around the mercenary. The rank S that were flung back were about to jump to block the incoming attacks when they stood back stupefied at the sight of their leader. The transparent figure of the skill she had casted held a long sword, its body boasting an incredible size of more than 8 meters. The essence around us roiled as the being was fully formed. The figure of the epic-ranked mercenary could now be seen in the transparent belly of the incarnation she had casted, each of her movements being duplicated to perfection as sharp winds came out from the large transparent thing holding a long sword. The roiling snakes of flames and lightning were all blocked as the figure stood imposingly to meet my next attack as I remained in the dark. So this was an epic-ranked individual. The power it let off was definitely higher than my S+ summon or the devastation skill. But since I could cast them multiple times without reservation, I would make up for the lack of power in quantity. This wasn't to mention powerful support skills like Aura of Belligerence, that further increased my damage, making me confident if my skills weren't already packing firepower equal to epic, they were nearing. As the mercenaries waited for the next attack, what met their eyes was a grotesque beast that was even larger now that it was S+ ranked. The virulent abomination that had become a plague-bearer appeared with wide green wings outstretched. Poison was constantly falling off its body in blobs of green that smashed into the ground. As soon as the expanded mercenary saw the monstrosity, the large body moved with a speed that it shouldn't have as its sword struck down with a beautiful circular swing. My summon did not evade the incoming sword, its belly rumbling as its mouth unnaturally opened more than a meter wide. Poisonous Breath, a skill unique to the plague-bearer, was casted. The air trembled as this skill made its appearance. Green and murky, with an unbearable stench, the noxious collection of liquid and fumes came out to cover the entirety of the rushing figure. Boom! The large sword of the expanded mercenary smashed into my summon, knocking it down and nearly splitting it in half. But, like a sticky material, its two sides were slowly joining back together as Saint's Return was already active and healing its injured body while continuing to provide buffs. Using Regal Archer's eyes, I could see the figure of the woman in the enclosed transparent incarnation move in pain. Her left arm had turned a deadly shade of green as the figure she commanded did the same. She could not completely evade the poisonous breath. I tried to remain as emotionless as possible and casted more devastation, as well as giving another command to the upgraded and healed summon. Its other newly gained skill, Defiler, could not be put to full use as there were not many corpses nearby. 2 rank S mercenaries had already met their end from being too close when the poisonous breath landed, with the rest of them going further in the distance as they tried to jump into the fight with panic. To them, only a single enemy had appeared, and even after taking a strike from the most powerful person there, it just closed itself up like it was nothing. Oh. The plague-bearer howled as its wings flapped, rushing towards the 8-meter incarnation once more. The roiling snakes of flames and lightning that completely ignored it and smashed into the enemy gave a fantastic picture of this grand battle. The epic-ranked mercenary wasn't for show, as the incarnation holding a sword she had casted was becoming more and more solid as time passed. Its blade became faster as it rushed towards the summon. The sight in front of me was hard to describe. The 8-meter-tall figure that enveloped the epic mercenary was moving as if it was the lightest thing in the world, the long blade in its hands spinning beautifully in the air as the summon continued to evade the strikes. One of them finally connected. The blade wedged itself deep into the body of the plague-bearer that was now over 6 meters. It pierced from the front to the back completely, and without reservation, the summon continued forward. Its wings flapped behind it as it ignored all the damage and came close to the belly of the incarnation where the mercenary was hiding in. Green smoke roiled out as 2 green bodies unnaturally appeared, flinging themselves towards the figure of the large incarnation as well. These were the 2 dead rank S mercenaries that fell from poisonous breath. Their arms flailed as they seemed like the fastest zombies alive, reaching and sticking to the epic-ranked mercenary's large figure in an instant. This was the second skill that the upgraded summon could now use, Defiler. When I first watched this skill in action, too many grand ideas popped up as I saw the summon controlling the bodies of dead beasts and flinging them around like poisonous bombs. A cruel smile seemed to appear on the plague-bearer's wretched face as it reached the position it wanted. The two dead beings it controlled through the skill began expanding dangerously while stuck to the transparent figure as both them and the body of the plague bearer exploded. Boom. The impact shook the surrounding 15 meters as green muscle, pus, and bones flew out, knocking the large bladed figure backwards as screams rang out. There was a sense of desolation in the air. The rank S mercenaries were moving around avoiding deadly patches of green that were spread throughout the battlefield. One stayed near a patch of bubbling pus for a few seconds, only to feel his limbs start losing strength as he became poisoned. Find the attacker. Reinforce the commander. Occasional shouts could be heard as the figures moved around the poisonous battlefield. They had what could be considered great strength, and yet they had to evade the poison this beast released with the best of their abilities just to stay alive. More and more of them fell as they tried to reinforce their commander that continued to be swamped with constant and deadly attacks. A rank S seasoned warrior was moving through the snowy field frightfully as he tried to evade the thick lines of flames and lightning that snaked their way in the surroundings. He could feel desperation as he couldn't shake any of them off, with even the slightest lapse in concentration causing him to be poisoned by the air that was turning a shade of green. His vision began darkening as he moved, and soon slumped down. The epic-ranked commander was staring at the skies as she found her figure thrown back from the explosion. She could feel a searing pain running through her body that continued to be poisoned all this time. The recent explosion where that horrendous monstrosity as well as the dead it controlled attacked her had sealed the deal. She wanted this pain to stop. Someone of her caliber had never been subjected to this, and she was feeling extreme anger. Just who had the power to hide from her sight and attack her like a coward. She closed the eyes that were staring through the transparent figure of Sword Saint's incarnation, the skill that allowed her to get where she was today. She needed more energy to keep the skill active and bring it to life. The more energy she provided, the more solid the incarnation became. The pain from the poison was taking a lot of energy from her to keep it at bay, so she was stuck in an impasse. Boom. Her figure landed on the ground as she made up her mind. She didn't want to use it as there was no turning back, but she had no choice. A jewel shining in a menacing red light appeared in her hands. She did not hesitate as she brought it to her mouth and swallowed right away. Zing. An uncomfortable sound spread out through the snowy field as the red light permeated her body and the larger transparent figure that surrounded her as well. She seemed to be undergoing a transformation as a horn began appearing on her forehead. Her opponent would not leave her be though. In the middle of this transformation, the hideous-looking figure that leaked poisonous pus had reappeared and was already releasing another one of its vile breaths. Rifts continued to open up in the sky as flames and lightning struck down, not giving this powerful figure any respite during her transformation. The interruption caused the energies to go berserk as the change was only half completed, and the large transparent figure now tinged in red became more visible. The moment the sword in its hands slashed towards the monstrosity vomiting poisonous material, it stopped the belching and dashed towards her body, exploding again in the next moment. The mercenary was full of wrath as this occurred again and pushed her back, the poison reapplying itself with even more vigor after the second explosion. Her incarnation was getting back up again when she saw the same monstrosity appear and explode again for the second time. Boom. A third time. Boom. A fourth time. She was breathing heavily as she felt the incarnation fading away after using up all her mana. Fear of the unknown person that continued to send suicidal attacks with their monstrous beast had etched itself deep inside. Rough breathing was coming out as she saw the green monstrosity appear above her again as good as new. Ha ha ha. She found herself letting out gory laughs as the poison permeated through her at this ridiculous sight. Even swallowing that jewel for its forbidden power did not do a single thing about this attacker that didn't even bother to show himself. She had many decisions in her life and never regretted any, but it seemed she stood on the wrong side this time. She wanted to at least see the person capable of taking her down like this. What sort of great person are you? Why do you stand with the princess of a small kingdom in the north? Her thoughts soon came back to the current situation as she saw the monstrous green beast in the skies. She was baffled at the ridiculous repetition of explosions that continued to wear down her now 8-meter large body. The incarnation was slowly fading away as the monstrosity continued to explode and reappear in the next instant. At least give me the honor of seeing the person who would take my life. She found the strength to speak as her body worked to push out the poison and try to maintain the incarnation at the same time. Silence was all she received as she found the same beast appearing from a huge runic circle once again. Bah, pathetic. Not even enough balls to show yourself. The large incarnation used this time to vault the huge sword it was holding into the air where the monstrosity had appeared. Swish. The beast curved the rushing blade without difficulty as it only slashed air, and looked below at the transparent figure, and the mercenary still floating in it. A wicked expression could be seen as its large mouth began transforming. The epic-ranked mercenary looked at this and realized her journey would be ending here today. Unexplainable terror rose out as this idea spread throughout her being. Her sight was occupied by the beast's head that had its jaws opened unnaturally as it belched out poisonous atrocities towards her. A green light covered the eyes of this mercenary. In a moment, this green light turned into darkness. I breathed out in relief as I prevented the crazy power-up from continuing in front of me. Did she really think I would give her the time to transform into an even more powerful version of herself before acting? The dark, menacing light she swallowed before her failed transformation gave out an oppressive feeling, but I stopped whatever its purpose was meant to be. The power it let out was almost twice what I felt from the epic-ranked mercenary, and it had an evil feeling emanating. This appearance of this red light gave me a certain feeling of apprehension, and made me form some new assumptions that would be deadly if they were true. I had to move faster. During the many explosions that occurred from the plague-bearer carrying out its killer suicide attacks, the remaining rank S mercenaries had fallen from the constant blasts of poisons and the targeting attacks of devastation. I would be blessed with another set of S-rank skills, as well as something even more wondrous from the body of the epic mercenary that was bubbling with pus currently. I sent a command and watched as the summoned plague-bearer absorbed the poisonous fumes and liquids around us. I targeted the bodies of dead mercenaries as I started with the most powerful one first. The body glowed in a purple light when I neared it, a large skill book, an item, and multiple glistening cores appearing in my storage pouch right after. I was surprised as this was the first time that both an item and a skill book had come out from a singular enemy. The item was Kingslayer, a sword worthy of killing the highest echelons. Has a constantly sharpening blade edge and weighs as much as a feather. It was a glistening golden sword that was the same size as myself. It was such an exquisite sword that I couldn't help but grab and swing it a few times. I shook myself out of this new feeling as I looked at the skill book next. Corrupted Sword Saint's incarnation, the body and memories of a genius sword saint descend for as long as mana is provided. Requires caster to equip a sword to activate. When active, plus 300% physical damage, plus 300% speed, plus 200% defense, plus Dark Slayer sword style. I looked at the numbers shown on the skill description in shock at this new type of skill. It wasn't my usual type of skill that I learned, but I wanted to try it out so damn badly. I couldn't hold my excitement as I watched the particles of the epic-ranked skill book fade into my body. Now, what surprises will you bring? Been feeling a rare semblance of peace these past few days. If I could put it into words, it would go like this. You had a constantly sharpening blade hanging above your neck, and it could drop down any minute. This blade was so sharp and deadly that it built up a fear of the approaching death and continued to fill you with anxiety and dread. You then spend the next few years just constantly trying to avoid that blade, but it still hangs over you. Then one day, out of nowhere, you find a person that would lift this blade off your back and make sure it never approaches you again. The blade hanging and waiting to strike down on me was lifted by Sir Osmont. The stress and anxiety I had been feeling all this time, gone. Even now, I don't think this esteemed person knows just how much influence he has over me. I couldn't even begin to recount the amazing feats he continued to do. I expected his power to be very high for the unique skill to confirm that he would be the one to prevent the coming calamity, but I didn't know to what extent. An adventurer taking down a dungeon by himself was rare, but not mind-bending. Doing the same thing for rankest dungeons? That was a whole other level. Putting his battle power aside, Something even more magical was his power that allowed him to turn a barren land fertile and cause the almost instantaneous growth and ripening of plants. This was the thing that completely cemented my trust in him and made him all the more special. I was able to put this dukedom's leader completely under my influence with the sudden abundance of foods that Ike provided. And now, I was waiting beside the carriage as he went to face a deadly epic-ranked powerhouse with a smile. I patiently waited as I held full trust in him, and soon saw a gold light fly in from the distance. This was one of the secrets I held, the ability to see his light whenever he was near due to my unique skill. He seemed to have an even more amazing skill that allowed him to become completely hidden to anyone near him, along with the addition of the purposefully made veiled suit. But my skill always reacted when he was near. I smiled at his expected successful return and opened the doors to the wide carriage, overlooking the long line of wagons behind us as I gave the signal to prepare to move out. The esteemed Sir silently got in the ride, with me going in last and closing the door, multiple barriers encircling the carriage. Soon after, he had the same calm face as he reappeared in front of my eyes, with a hint of worry as he seemed to be lost in thought. The significance of the event that just occurred seemed to be minor in his eyes, but it was something tremendous. Epic-ranked powerhouses were a nation's deterrents, and he had just defeated one. He had successfully taken down those that wished us harm, and the effects would be large. I would be using this event to my advantage and seek an audience with Father as soon as we get back to the kingdom. He seemed to have made up his mind after a while and spoke. "You asked me before what I wanted? What exactly did someone like this want?" I had an inkling but wanted to hear it from him first. If it was what I had in mind, I would wholly give it to you. He looked at me seriously as the golden light on his body shined even more. "If I told you that I wanted to take this whole world into the palm of my hands, what would you say?" I could feel my heartbeat increasing when he said this. It was better than my wildest dreams. I replied as I could feel a smile slowly form on my face. "For someone with your power, it would only be natural." Did he finally decide on his ambitions? For him to prevent the coming calamities, he had to lead us through them. My peace-loving father would not be able to do it. My scheming older brother would fail even more. My unique skill told me this was the person to stick to in order to pass through the coming times. If not just me, but the entire world that attaches itself to him, then naturally the whole continent will find itself with less anxiety just like me. I trusted my skill that much. My mind had long ago been made up as I rose in the wide carriage and bowed towards this man once again. The cold voice that I wished had more emotion rang out. My heart was pounding as the words left my mouth. "I formally greet and show respect to esteemed sir. As I have said before, whatever you need, I will provide. For the prosperity of myself and many more that are suffering, I will follow the direction you lead us to." Somewhere in the frozen lands, a demon king was surrounded by scantily clad figures in a compound that seemed recently erected. Ranked 56, he was Demon King Gremry. 2 horns could be seen growing on the sides of his temple, with a face that seems to be a better fit if it were placed on a woman. He was the holder of the unique skill, Primal Conjure, which allowed him to call upon 2 powerful primal spirits of the same level as himself. His presence alone was the equivalent of 3 beings of the same rank, and he was terribly powerful. He was not fond of the cold, and yet he was the one assigned to the weak kingdom in the north. He was currently moving one of the demon legions towards this place slowly, as the cold and the mountains surrounding this kingdom were the only things slowing their destruction. That didn't stop him from sending a few forces ahead to do what demons do best, sowing discord. Of course, someone had taken the bait. They had been hesitant at first but soon came to willingness after realizing the number of forces the demons had on their side, as well as other factors in the mix. Since that time, they had slowly moved forward, taking over a few counties and duchies, their advance not slowing down. Yet, something out of his expectations had occurred a few hours ago. One of the few power jewels he had procured had been used, only for its user to die a few seconds later. The protector he had sent forward to placate one of his pieces had fallen. This meant some problems had occurred. For them to be forced to use the power jewel and still die meant they had come across a powerful enemy. He was already waiting for his messengers to return after establishing a line of communication, but the event made him begin taking his mission seriously. Losing a power jewel as well as its user was a very big loss, and he did not enjoy taking losses. He called forth his lieutenants as he gave the order for the Demon Legion to start moving once more, increasing their speed towards the Lone Kingdom in the north. We arrived back to the Frozen Kingdom after half a day. The ride back in the carriage was interesting, to say the least, as the princess continued to exceed my expectations of just how much trust she placed on me because of her unique skill. She said she would do anything, and I believed her. With such a person in place, the issues dealing with the kingdom would be taken care of with ease. The procession of carriages and wagons went inside as citizens welcomed back their ice princess with vigor. I talked with Adelaide about the events after this, and she was confident that nothing even remotely dangerous would happen now that she set foot back here. Even the person scheming in the back would be crippled for a while after they lost such a big piece. She would be meeting the king after I left, a powerhouse that I was interested in seeing sometime soon. But I was itching to test out my new skills on powerful opponents, so after escorting the princess to the snowy peak and seeing all the guards surrounding the manor, I flew out and made my way over to the Sky Peak nest. It was time for me to have fun with that epic beast I ran away from more than a week back. My speed with flight continued to increase as I learned and activated more support skills, but I was using it for its function of keeping me in the air as I used Regal Archer's Eyes and Instant Transfer in conjunction to disappear and appear a few miles away. Using flight at its maximum speed would get me across the same distance, but not as fast as the instantaneous movement. I thought back to the other rank S skills I received from the dead mercenaries earlier today as I flashed towards the beast's nest. The ones that I didn't see myself actively using but I still learned nonetheless were Ricocheting Shield, Bear's Fighting Style, and Archer's Gamble. The more useful ones were two support skills, Lion's Heart and Speedster, that increased my speed and damage even further. The remaining four were two offensive skills and two standard ones that I liked. The offensive ones were Smoldering Sword Strike and Earthen Spears, with the ones I called standard being Thought Acceleration, the speed of your thought processing is raised significantly, and Crisis Avoidance, a few extra seconds are given to you as you sense incoming danger. The last two skills were great, especially Thought Acceleration, that seemed like one of the best rank S skills I've received so far. I knew it wasn't all-powerful as the person who had it previously fell under my attacks, but it was still a great supplement. Many decisions and thoughts could be made rapidly in a short time span with this skill, allowing me to assess many things quickly before moving forward. I soon arrived near the towering Sky Peak nest and looked to the prowling beasts below. The goal today was to fully enjoy the usage of the new epic skill that I gained. With the excitement that I couldn't contain, I landed on the floating landmass, equipped the epic ranked Kingslayer sword, and cast Corrupted Sword Saint's Incarnation. A powerful beast was slumbering not too far from the outer fringes of the Sky Peak nest. Ever since it felt the frequent killings of its brethren a few days ago, it had remained in the periphery of the nest waiting for those cowards that only dared to bully those weaker than them. Days had passed with no intrusion as it thought about heading back inland where the concentration of essence was much denser. It looked like it wouldn't leave in disappointment as its red eyes opened because of the new vibrations it could feel on the earth. An expression of glee appeared on its ferocious body as it rose up to be larger than 6 meters, its disproportionate limbs flinging around its sides. It went forward to see if it was the same intruder that ran away from it last time. It slowly inched forward so as to not scare the coward away again, and came to a surprising sight of a larger figure swinging around a dark red sword at extreme speeds. The figure was more than 7 meters large, with a face that had a dark red horn pointing to the skies and a body fully covered in armor. It let out ripples of power as the sword that should have been heavy in his hands moved around like a feather, smashing into the surrounding beings and causing them to explode in a mass of flesh and gore. The epic beast watching this was angered as it let out a howl and went forward at full speed to clash with this intruder. Boom! As if he knew it was coming, a sword met its outstretched claws as a thundering voice came out from the large swordsman. "Ha, you're finally here again. Let's go!" The battle started off rapidly as the two figures clashed. Enfeeble was casted right away as the snowy beast felt its power weaken. The beast that was proud of the speed and defenses it had trained all these years found its strikes being met with the sword every time, its claws feeling pain and cracks after every clash. The being in front of it seemed to be letting out purely physical attacks, with shockwaves exploding after every point of contact. The large figure was moving gracefully with the sword, meeting every single attack the beast threw with extreme precision, so it casted its innate ability, Iceberg, to end the fight as soon as possible. A resounding horn that seemed to signal an arrival could be heard as a tremendous landmass filled with a deadly collection of ice elements appeared above them. The iceberg was more than 30 meters long and covered the entirety of their sight as the beast wrapped its large body around the large swordsman and held him down. Boom! A tremendous impact that shook the entire sky peak nest occurred as the iceberg smashed into the ground. Ha! A laugh could be heard as the beast felt the body it was holding down slip away the moment before its attack hit, making it furious. He clawed out of the jagged spears of ice from the fallen iceberg and found the figure mockingly laughing above it, safe and sound. The 8-meter-long incarnation remained suspended in the air, defying the laws of gravity as the body became more and more solid as the red light spread throughout the skies before deadly words could be heard from it. "All right, that's enough playing around for now." The beast's body was shining as it prepared to go all out against the intruder, and it seemed like its opponent was doing the same. A green runic circle appeared as another powerful presence came out of it, and multiple cracks that let out deadly power of flames and lightning formed in the skies. Neither was backing down as a brand new iceberg appeared high in the skies. The corrupted incarnation looked up to the falling landmass and pointed its large blade up, the body becoming enveloped in red light as the Dark Slayer sword style was activated. While a dark red light spread out in the skies above, a menacing green was spreading throughout the ground as the plague bearer triggered, Defiler, onto the surrounding bodies of beasts. The bodies unnaturally began rising as they turned a deadly shade of green, all turning into furious runs towards the epic beast. The humongous incarnation shining in a red light jumped from the ground, leaving behind a crater as it rotated in a spectacular dance, spinning rapidly in the air as the figure smashed into the falling iceberg. Boom! Chunks of solid ice flew out as the large iceberg was clearly cut in half, its two portions falling on the ground below where a battle continued with a monstrosity belching out poisonous breaths towards the epic beast. It tried maneuvering from the snaking lines of flames and lightning as well as the poisonous beast and was becoming slowly overwhelmed. It howled defiantly as it looked up to see its attack sliced apart, and could only see the figure of the large swordsman rushing towards it, the sword in hand already pointing towards its chest. Boom! The impact of the large body smashing into the ground resounded, as the pained howl of a beast rang out. The red sword had pierced all the way through to the back of his chest, going even further to pierce into the ground. Strength began leaving its body as it could feel deadly power from the sword ravaging all his being. It didn't help at all that the poisonous beast was commanding the bodies of its dead brethren to continue exploding and cause more virulent poison to pierce into its hardened skin armor and leave its deadly attacks on it too. It struggled at the sword that nailed it to the ground and tried to move out, but it was unsuccessful. The struggles gradually became less and less as ragged breaths came out. It watched the large figure of the solid swordsman with the horn rising from his head continue to pull its fists up and smash them into its body. The tremendous strength of the strikes was purely physical damage that was causing searing pain wherever they landed. The combination of a giant figure with a sword, roiling snakes of flames and lightning, as well as a poisonous monstrosity slowly dwindled the life force of the epic-ranked beast until it could no longer move. Silence prevailed as the body of Noah surrounded by the sword saint's incarnation looked further into the sky peak nest. Multiple powerful auras in no way less than the beast he just took down had become active at the center of the nest and were making their way here. The large incarnation could be seen devilishly smiling as it reached out to the body of the dead beast, and then flashed away into nothingness. 3 tremendously powerful auras arrived not too long after, but the only thing that met them was a poisonous battlefield with the mangled body of their brethren. King Rourke Belmont, the powerful figure that led the frozen kingdom into prosperity. Or so many people thought. Rourke was overlooking the lands beneath him as he stood in the highest castle of the king's crown peak. He thought of the memory of his dear wife as his aged eyes moved with longing. Annalise, do you know how much I want to be with you right now? So many things are happening and I don't know how to pass through them. Where is your wisdom when I need it the most? A sigh could be heard as the powerful bearded man stretched. He was getting old, but still had the same power of legendary rank. The thing that caused him the most stress was overseeing every single department to make sure things continued to go smoothly in the kingdom. But resources continued to dwindle with every passing day as the war raged on. What tired him even more were the soldiers he was taking away from their families, with many of them never able to see their loved ones again. When does it all stop, Annalise? The grand man seemed lost as he continued to gaze below. He thought about the only person that seemed to be lifting some of the weight and helping with the stabilization of the kingdom. It was at this moment that he heard the sound of footsteps that were very familiar. Speak of the devil. The father smiled as he turned around and found his daughter entering the terrace. He looked fondly at this girl that didn't always show emotion on her face, but he knew how much she cared. Your trip was a success? Relatively, father. Although not without extreme complications. Rourke's face changed as he heard this. She was back here safe and sound with no commotion being caused. What could have happened? His face became cloudy as he asked, what went wrong? On the way back here, there was an ambush waiting for me that consisted of an epic-ranked powerhouse and a collection of rank S. Here is a memory stone that was able to capture the faces of these ambushers. King Rourke's face had become dark as he caught the memory stone that could record and replay a scene when a certain amount of mana was put in. A shadow guard that was lucky enough not to be noticed took this at the risk of their lives. Can you recognize the people on there? Her voice seemed to be getting colder and colder as she spoke, bordering on the line of disrespect that nobody should cross with their father. But King Rourke was sullen as he saw the recording of a woman under the command of a special someone. He looked at the blank face of his daughter and was glad she was safe and sound as he asked, how did you make it out? And what happened to the attackers? If I told you a prince in shining armor appeared to save the life of the princess and kill those that wished her harm, would you believe me? The exchange between father and daughter stalled after this, with the daughter proceeding forward. When I was 11 years old, I came to you and told you that I didn't feel comfortable with how my own brother stared at me. You brushed it off as the ramblings of a child and told me to be more approachable. Adelaide walked as she stood near her father, overlooking the buildings below them as she continued. When I was 15 years old, I began hiring even more guards to escort me after I was almost kidnapped. You allowed this and gave me more power as you didn't want that to ever happen again. I told you who the mastermind that orchestrated this whole act was, yet you did not believe me. Her gaze turned from the buildings back to her father, the same voice ringing out. The years after that I continued to protect myself and rarely left the kingdom, and here we are today. I am telling you once again. My own older brother, your son, orchestrated all of this to get his hands on me. I wonder what you will choose to do now, father. Meet the person next to him. He is my son. The words were difficult to start, but he began anyway. My firstborn son, and I thought he would change in time. I promised him the kingdom in the hopes of it. I also did my best to give you everything you wanted. He gave a tired look to his daughter as he said this. Under the veil of a thriving kingdom, the house that leads it is fractured with stupidity and unneeded conflicts. When was the last time you went to see your younger brother? Adelaide turned away after hearing this question. She recalled the face of someone she had hoped would stand with her at one point. He was the biggest loss I have ever taken. Someone that I thought would be worth helping, and he too let me down. A horrible son, a calculating daughter, and another son that could never choose what he wanted to be. A difficult decision seemed to have been made in the mind of the king, as he raised his chest up and commanded with a powerful voice. Very well, convene a grand assembly. The tone was powerful, one that could not be questioned. The girl by his side bowed after she heard this. Yes, father. A commotion was occurring in the 4 floating peaks as the relevant people got word that a grand assembly was convening in a few days. Nobles panicked as they began preparing the moment they received notice, fearfully questioning what had prompted such an abrupt call for an assembly. In a large manor at the center of Summit Peak, an extravagant prince was fuming with a face full of anger. He had made a bet and lost terribly. He thought the chance was too sweet to pass up, that his opponent would never make such a mistake like this in the first place. But it was actually a trap? She had played him? Ha ha. Rueful laughs came out as his head was raised up furiously. Who exactly did you whore yourself out to? Which powerful helper did you find for yourself, little lamb? He wondered about the defeat he had faced as his face regained its calm, and he pondered. A setback was a setback, he would get over it. What he did from now would define how his plans continue to unfold. He could feel the communication medallion he received from a few special beings that had been ringing for a while. He moved around the room as he shifted from moods of pondering to rage. The area was filled with anger and malice as the man paced back and forth. He felt as if a knife was closing in on his neck, and he did not know where it was coming from. She and everyone else in this kingdom had no idea of the things he was doing to keep them safe. They didn't understand now, but they would all come to be grateful in the future. As for this knife pressing down, let's see just how sharp you are. I was still relishing the excitement of moving in an 8-meter-tall body as I floated a few miles away from Sky Peak Nest. The three powerful presences were most likely some of the powerful epic-ranked beasts that almost always stayed in the center of the nest. I was told that a possible reason the beasts continue to stay in the nest was due to the deterrent of the powerful individual that was the king of the frozen kingdom. The common knowledge currently was that only after more epic-ranked beasts were born in the nest or the momentous rise of one of a higher-rank beast occurred would they grow courageous enough to lead their packs out of the nest again. Even though I was pretty confident of coming out in one piece even while taking on all three beasts, I would still over-prepare if I can. I looked through the loot from taking down the disproportionately sized white-furred beast. I found epic-ranked cores to start absorbing as well as 2 skill books. One of the skill books was the spectacular iceberg that the beast was casting. It manifested a freezing and nearly solid mass of ice that was more than 30 meters. Such a skill was already tremendously powerful in the hands of the beast, but to me who could cast it multiple times? I couldn't wait to use this as soon as possible as I looked towards the next skill. It was absolute zero. The heat near you is sapped away as ice elements reinforce your body and attacks. When active, all attacks carry the freezing touch effect, plus 100% ice element resistance. I had a wide grin as I viewed the 2 skill books disappear into particles of light. With even more additions of epic skills, I wanted to badly go back and have a go at the 3 new epic beasts that popped out, but there were still too many unknowns. I would find out more about just how many beasts of high rank were in each nest before finding myself surrounded. I had already taken down one of them. They wouldn't make it that easy for me to continue taking down more. Another point was that I received the first epic skill that I could activate at all times and would continue to grow stronger as time passed, or so I thought. The moment I activated Absolute Zero, the surroundings of 5 meters became deathly cold with ice being condensed all around visible to the naked eye. Soon enough, a storm of ice elements could be seen rotating around me as just the outward effects of this skill were this powerful. I stopped myself from rushing back into the nest and went back to the frozen kingdom. I had to find out the new developments that occurred, as well as prepare for big moves soon. I deactivated Corrupted Sword Saint's Incarnation and Absolute Zero as I neared the kingdom, and looked at the grim looks of guards that had vastly increased on the large fortress wall as well as the closed doors. Things seemed to be moving along as I passed the fortress wall and thought about the first epic skill I received. The corrupted in the skill name made me think quite a while as I replayed the scene of the mercenary swallowing that menacing red jewel, but I would solve the mystery in due time. My figure covertly passed through many buildings below, passing by the moving humans and beastmen as I went towards Snowy Peak. Even the epic-ranked beastman standing guard at the entrance of Snowy Peak was not able to catch a glimpse of my aura with the many covert skills I had active. It didn't take too long until I came across the huge manor at the center of the floating landmass, and I found the princess giving out commands to a few shadow guards. I smiled at the fact that even with many skills that made it so that an epic individual wouldn't notice me, she was still able to see me the moment I came in through the use of her unique skill. This made me look forward to when I met the individuals who held such skills and they stood against me. The shadow guards were quickly sent away with my appearance, and I got the chance to hear about the developments after she went to meet with the king. One of the major takeaways was how King Rourke finally seemed to be acting against his crappy son after all this time. Being given clear proof didn't allow him to use the excuse of fatherly love anymore, and he had to bring to account everything else. The other takeaway was the grand assembly that would be convened in a soon. The princess had an inkling of what things would be mentioned as she talked about her aging father and the toll the war was taking on him. My mind was filled with curiosity as I thought of this man who was a rank above anything I have met so far. Legendary. That was the rank that many of the top powers had in this large continent. The type of strength that they held made me extremely hopeful and excited to reach it myself. The only issue that presented itself was the demon kings that were running rampant across the continent of the beast world currently. Their powers were most likely legendary, or even worse, along with their strength being boosted by their unique and sometimes ultimate skills for those that are of higher rank. I was looking forward to possibly matching their strength with my continued stacking of many skills that have worked well to allow me to defeat people of the next rank so far. Would it be the same when they are of the next rank and also holding powerful categories of skills and magic? This brought us to the other takeaway today. A demon legion that was slowly making its way towards the kingdom was now advancing at full force. This was why fear was in the air, with the battalions of the kingdom being put on standby, soon set to be sent to the defensive positions across the cold mountains to hold back the advancing demons. I had to continue to move faster with this new information and amass as many epic skills as I could before the clash. I thought about how I might not be the most powerful figure taking the role in this fight, as the king himself would be moving, but only time would tell. My blessing of nearly endless energy to work with made it so I could skip ranks, but I didn't know how wide the gaps were as I continued to rise higher and higher. So, while people are preparing for war by convening assemblies and troops, I would prepare by obtaining more loot from epic beasts. The talks and discussions about possible ways everything could go continued as I found myself roasting a few types of meat to enjoy at the same time. The day finished like this, fairly fun and eventful. The skills combined today were Guardian's Light plus Healing Light, A plus Paladin's Blessing. Infernal Purge plus Arc Lightning, A plus Pursuing Infernal Lightning. Noah Osmont, Occupation, Hunter. Vitality, 375. Focus. Strength, 388. Skills, F, C, B, F. Flights 100, Instant Transfer 100, Area Expansion 22, Pain Resistance 100, Recorder 100, Language Comprehension 100, Lion's Roar 23, Water Barrier 100, Pierce 100, Executor's Speed 100, Sense Heat Source 100, Silent Communication 55, Regal Archer's Eyes 66, Cook 33, A+, Arctic Zone 100, Relegator's Spear 23, Immutable Regeneration 100, Abstruse Covereds 23, Barrier of Illusion 23, Paladin's Blessing 1, Pursuing Infernal Lightning 1, S. Protection of the Wounded 100, Flashed 18, Aura of Belligerence 31, Enfeebled 22, Phoenix Arrow 1, Shield Slam 1, Obfuscation 45, Rune of Defense 11, Dragon Scales 11, Budding Farmer 8, Ricocheting Shield 1, Bear's Fighting Style 1, Archer's Gamble 1, Lion's Heart 8, Speedster 8, Smoldering Sword Strike Dash, Earthen Spears 1, Thought Acceleration 8, Crisis Avoidance 8, S+, Saints Return 69, Devastation 51, Plague Bearer 65. Epic, Corrupted Sword Saints Incarnation 8, Iceberg 1, Absolute 0-3. Equipment, 3x Bearing of Storage, A Ring of Storage, S Storage Pouch, S Veiled Suit, S Legion Armor, S Viridian Boots, Epic Kingslayer. Calm had returned to Aeneas's face as he sat down on a luxurious couch and took out the metal that had been blinking all this time. He had a sufficient period to think and prepare before having this very dangerous conversation. Mana flowed into the metal and it shone briefly, a strong voice coming out not too long after. What happened? Hearing this voice, Aeneas's eyes turned into thin slits as the next words rolled out of him calmly. I underestimated someone I thought I had full information of. None of the plans we previously discussed have been disrupted. Your underestimation was the cause of the death of an epic-ranked powerhouse? Slight anger could be felt in the voice, causing a similar reaction to the listening Aeneas. Is it my fault that you sent me such a weak powerhouse? You boasted that as long as she wasn't besieged by multiple epic individuals, she would be a pillar I could rely on. She was a powerful mercenary, and even used a treasure I provided her before she died. She should have been at her most powerful when she fell, so I need to know which enemy you made that has so many individuals who likely besieged her to take her life. At these words, Aeneas stalled as a dangerous light shone in his eyes. The enemy is not one you have to worry about. You just have to keep your side of the bargain. I do not want any deaths for the common people in this kingdom, and my father, as well as my siblings, will be left untouched. He had struck a deal with the devil for the preservation of his home. Months back, he had received a memory stone that showed terrifying things. Multiple demon legions under the commands of powerful demon kings that had powerful and unknown magic. The mythical beast kingdoms were the ones receiving the brunt of the attention of these demon kings as they held many powerhouses. But what about the small kingdom in the north? The safe haven that housed humans without persecution only had a single legendary individual in the lead. How could they stand against a force that took down the strongest draconic kingdom in the span of a few months? Under such immense strength, would it not be better to swallow their pride and just wipe their chins? His father knew they would fall as time passed, yet he did nothing. He fought a losing war, with soldiers continuing to die as time passed. He was a staunch man who considered honor and honesty, and they would all die because of it. Would such a thing give them the sudden strength to withstand a rampaging demon king or the many horrors that will come before it? This was why he both hated and loved his father. He was a powerful man that created a beautiful place for all people to live in, but he was a good man. Good men never win. It is not good men that conquer kingdoms and build legacies. It is merciless people that wage war and kill millions before they etch their name for the dynasties to come. With them in the rule, history is theirs to write. The genocides they caused to obtain the lands and their resources? Erased and forgotten. The natives they conquered to enslave them to work under them for hundreds of years? Just backward people who needed to be led to the prospering direction. This was how history always went. History was written by the victors, and it did not matter how cruel they were as long as they obtained victory and made the world what they wanted. That was why he shook hands with the devil. To preserve the lives of his family and the many people that would face death at the hands of these demons. He would not be one of the droves of good men that valiantly die upholding some stupid beliefs. He would not watch as the kingdom his father has created these past decades goes up in flames. Even if a few people had to die to achieve his goals, history won't remember that. During all this, if he can also get his hands on someone he's wanted all this time, well, that was a thought for later. The voice of the stern demon king rang out once more. The terms we agreed on will certainly be adhered to. You just need to make sure that you continue administering the poison so that unexpected casualties do not occur. At the mention of this, a difficult expression showed on the crown prince's face. Feelings of shame and sadness could be seen on his face as he thought about his actions. He was weakening his own father. This was something he found hard to do in the beginning, but as he continued to hear about the demons' continuing victories as they tore down more defenses of the beast kingdoms, he affirmed his beliefs. I will apologize to you later, but at least we will both live to see another few decades after this. He fought back against the feelings of shame and weakness as he replied to the waiting demon king with a strong voice. I will keep my end of the deal, period. When will your forces be arriving? A few seconds of silence passed before a reply came, a week at most, a few days at least. The crown prince nodded as he confirmed this, rising up from his seat and preparing for the oncoming assembly as he cut off the communication metal. Demon King Gremory had a wicked smile on his face as he finished conversing with a pitiful prince. This was what he loved to do the most. A gleeful amen escaped him as he was lost in his own fantasy. Yes, they had strong forces that would easily take over this small kingdom in the north. His power was equivalent to 3 legendary individuals because of his unique skill. Primal conjurer would be more than enough to take down the kingdom's forces, and yet he still made plans to lessen his work even more. He created a play by showing a prince of this kingdom the deadly power that was coming for them, and making them fold into weakening their own forces on the promise that they would all not be killed or enslaved, leaving him to rule in the end. The memory stone the prince received was tampered with long ago by a powerful demon king who was a master of illusions and emotions. While the prince thought he was just watching the scenes of powerful demon legions, his mental defenses were torn down as he became completely susceptible to the communications after that. A measly prince that was ranked as, how hard was it to put one under your influence? All that he did after was place a guard to watch him, but this guard had unexpectedly fallen. There was still a question that many people would have asked this demon king who went through all of this trouble when he had the power to easily take down the target. Was any of this necessary? The answer was no. Gremory gleefully thought of the faces he would see at the end of this play. The encroached prince could only believe in a promise as they would face destruction anyways, and the lives of his people depended on it. Gremory couldn't wait to see their faces at the end of all of this. He imagined the face of the king. Would he be saddened and depressed by his son's betrayal after the poison in his body is activated and he finds his power reducing? Would the prince be filled with despair when he finds all the promises made being broken? Even better, what expression would he have when he sees his family humiliated? The demon king had to cool himself down as he was getting too heated thinking about the conclusion of his play. The only thing he had to keep in mind was the possible disruption from an enemy that the prince chose not to mention. After that, he could just sit back and watch the drama he created to play out. No, he didn't have to do any of it. No, it would not affect the eventual end result. Yet he did it anyway. Because it was fun. I kept in mind the grand assembly that would be taking place sometime later today as I made plans to go back to the Sky Peak nest. The full information I received let me know that the last time a legendary beast arose in the nest and led an insurrection was decades ago when the kingdom was in its early beginnings. It took the strength of the powerful king along with the help of the epic battalion commanders to quell the beast's insurrection and slay the most powerful one, pushing the beasts back onto their floating landmass. The only beasts currently propagating the dungeons were epic ranked, their numbers most likely not that high. The other two nests that were located further away from the kingdom were between frozen mountains that had a similar level of beasts, but were worried less about because of their locations. Occasional checks were still made to be sure that no powerful beasts were rising and consolidating forces. Since I had already taken down one of the powerful beasts in this nearby nest, it would be easier to take down more of them, so this would continue to be my target. I would get as many epic skills as I could before all hell broke loose. As for the assembly that I would most likely be missing, I could make better use of my time getting stronger than listening in. I'll know all about what was discussed when I got back anyways. Amassing more strength before the battle fully starts was crucial. Now, my full focus was placed on how to utilize the epic rank skills I had to efficiently and safely hunt down the beasts that I could sense yesterday. I had already absorbed the epic cores that the beast dropped, giving me a significant boost in my attributes. The skills I liked the most currently were Corrupted Sword Saint's Incarnation and Absolute Zero. This was simply because their combination was killer. My body received a huge buff and became exceedingly huge after calling down the Incarnation, and I couldn't even begin to explain the thrill of moving around in it. As for why the skill had the corrupted tag in front of it, this was likely due to the powerful jewel the mercenary absorbed before she was about to transform. I was not at all hesitant to use the skill when I saw the red light and long horn pointing out from the head, as strength was strength, no matter which forms it came in. Now, with the addition of Absolute Zero, a piercing layer of ice elements danced on the surface of the large body, with even more of them collected on the edge of the outstretched long blade. Iceberg was another killer skill with a tremendous amount of damage, and would work best to clear large droves of enemies. With this in mind, I neared the Sky Peak nest with full concentration. The death of even a single epic beast should have put all the other ones on the island on the edge. Sure enough, Crisis Avoidance showed me that there were multiple powerful figures waiting to strike not too far inland of the nest. Well, the threat was not showing to be too high, just that it would take a significant amount of work. I could feel a smile forming on my face with this thought. This little bit of work was nothing to grab more epic skills. Before even landing on the floating nest, the poisonous plague bearer was summoned, and corrupted sword saint's incarnation, was cast as my body began to be enveloped all around. I could feel the tremendous boost of power rushing in as the incarnation fully formed, making me enjoy this feeling just a tad bit too much. Absolute Zero was cast next as the air around me began forming cold crystals and my body gained a white layer on top of the red one. Hexagonal columns of icy white crystals spread all around me, snaking their way to the outstretched sword as well. A storm of ice elements then formed around me as the skill fully formed. My figure was striking as I floated grandly in the air. I was fully prepared and began the fight by sending my summon over. The instant it landed on the nest and attracted the attention of a few beasts, the dangerous auras I had been feeling all this time moved. The three bosses that appeared varied in shape. The one standing at the forefront was a 6-meter-tall emperor penguin. It had sleek black feathers on its head and back with a white-yellowish belly that shone in the light. A ferocious expression was on its face as it looked towards the plague bearer, and then to my figure hidden in the skies. To the right of the emperor penguin was a large white wolf of exactly the same size. It seemed like an Arctic wolf, with its dangerously glowing yellow eyes and bared sharp teeth. To the left of these two was something even larger than them, a nearly 10-meter-tall beast that seemed very similar to a walrus. It had powerful tusks pointing down from its mouth with an extremely ugly face that was looking at me angrily. Among all of these three, the fat walrus seemed to be letting out the most dangerous vibes. I felt the extended epic sword in my hands as I breathed out dense cold air, and my figure blurred down towards the beast. I tried to keep my excitement in check as I found myself fighting against beings as powerful as these in equal standing. I didn't forget where I came from, and just how weak I was just a few weeks ago. From the dilapidated apartment in Outer Bank X, to the quick rise from rank F and above. There had been many changes and progress, and they all brought me here today. In a completely different world where beings of all powers were present, and I was closing in on those same levels. My reminiscing came to a stop as the blade on my hands struck the thick skin of the dark walrus. Like it met the layer of fat, the sword sank in just a bit, the freezing touch effect from Absolute Zero, activating and causing a blooming flower of ice to bloom from the struck location, but its damage was reduced with the tough body of the beast that had the cold as its home. The walrus retaliated with a quick swing of its hairless flippers that condensed cold spears as they smacked into my large body. Even with Flash still activated and my large body maneuvering in the air, the speed was too fast to evade. Boom. The impact sent me to the side, where the large white wolf was waiting with its jaws spread wide open. Terrible energy was being collected in its mouth as a blue beam shot out towards me. Instant trance was quickly activated as I faded away and appeared in the air, looking to the three beasts below. The emperor penguin that should have been kept busy with the plague bearer had formed a hazy gray light on its flippers and smacked them into the body of my summon, and I watched with a surprised expression as the plague bearer disappeared from sight, the connection I had with it informing me it was now a few miles into the nest. Saint's return was already healing the damage my large figure received from the walrus and the blue beam of destructive energy that barely grazed me as I cast Summon Plague Bearer to call back the summon, when the emperor penguin on the ground shouted with a stern expression and disappeared from my sight. An alarm rang out as I felt Clash automatically activate to move my body out of harm's way as the large penguin appeared in the air. A hazy gray light was already covering its entire flipper as my body couldn't avoid it in time. The light just barely grazed me, but it was more than enough as I felt my body disappear, and it wasn't due to instant transfer this time. When I reappeared again, I found myself in an extremely large and dark environment with barely any light. Ancient frozen and broken structures were all around me, but that wasn't the point that gave me the biggest surprise. The biggest surprise was in this large environment I was transferred into with that attack from the emperor penguin. I was not alone. Multiple auras that were in no way less powerful than ones I had just been fighting honed in at my position. My mind moved rapidly as I counted the auras I could feel in the surroundings. My eyes shifted with regal archer's eyes, active as I tried to look into every nook and cranny of the dangerous locations. More than 12 powerful auras were in the large clearing, their bodies emitting stupid levels of power as they began to circle around me. I calmed my breathing at this unexpected and possibly perilous situation as my large incarnation grasped the long blade tighter, my skills ready to move at the slightest movement. Instant transfer could be used to move me to another location I could see, but the entire area was enclosed with no exits in sight. There were dense foliage and frozen surfaces all around as I could make out the varying sizes of beasts circling me. Their menacing eyes honed in as I felt movement once more. This time I watched the beasts I had been fighting with appearing one after another. The extremely fat walrus materialized first, with the Arctic wolf after, and finally, the emperor penguin that had the skill that allowed for all of this to happen. The air was palpitating with roiling essence as I prepared to fight for my life and find a chance to slip through this encirclement. The penguin looked towards me with its head raised disdainfully when a clear voice suddenly rang out in the surroundings. "You are a peculiarity." My eyes searched to see where the voice was coming from as my thoughts rapidly moved, but I could not find the source of the voice. "When you first appeared on this land, you were very weak and surrounded by others just like you. Yet, every time you returned after that you had grown significantly stronger, strong enough to even take out one of the contenders here. What exactly are you?" The voice was sonorous and strong, being seemingly feminine. I didn't reply and only continued to keep my focus at the many surrounding beasts. If I saw the slightest signs, I would summon the plague bearer and turn this entire area into a land of poison and try to make an escape for now. I didn't know what other powerful skills these beasts had in their arsenal, the skill that teleported me here making me extremely cautious. The voice rang out once again. "Oh well, it doesn't really matter. You taking down one of the contenders with your own power qualifies you for the trial currently taking place." At these words, my tension slightly calmed as I wondered just exactly what I had gotten into. I probingly asked, "A trial of what?" The beasts around me reigned in their wild auras as a disdainful voice came from the emperor penguin. This time, "You humans do not know of the secrets and intricacies of the special locations of the beast world. These spiritual lands you call nests and routinely come to bully those weaker than you are trial grounds meant to give birth to the toughest beasts." What? My mind absorbed this brand new information as I continued to listen. I was finally able to find the source of the first voice as it rang out once again, this time from a transparent red figure materializing in the air. "Yes, this is one of the spiritual lands where the most powerful beasts appear from. I underwent the strenuous task of upgrading this Tier 1 spiritual land into Tier 2 by using quite a bit of treasures for the possibility of creating another powerhouse in this era of war with the demons." The transparent figure had a fiery red color with the most exaggerated curves, taking the appearance of a human. She didn't seem to let out any aura of power, but she gave off the feeling of extreme danger. I continued to listen as I watched her move closer, her figure becoming extremely clear with every passing second. I have found no success so far, with talented individuals not being born in these past few decades, and that did not change even with the coming of demons. "The dear human, you hold promise?" The red figure floated in front of me with an air of elegance, and I could barely make out its exquisite facial features that seemed to be screaming nobility. Her next words became increasingly stern and cold as "crisis avoidance" sent me the loudest signals for the first time ever. Especially seeing this ability of yours that seems to stem from a source similar to the abyss magic of demons. I'm going to need you to explain very clearly how you came about this, or the next few minutes will be your last. Oh, and if you say any words other than the truth, I will know right away. My body that was enclosed in the large figure of the corrupted sword saint could feel the piercing gaze that broke past the outer cover and came to land on me. The corrupted tag of this skill that was most likely due to the jewel that woman ingested was actually going to give me trouble now? I calmed myself down and carefully thought things through. The words left my mouth slowly as thought acceleration worked at full speed to put everything into account. I gained this skill after defeating and ingesting the essence of a mercenary that was intending to harm the princess of the frozen kingdom I was escorting. The only thing I could note that might have any relation to demons was a jewel that the mercenary ingested during the fight. I myself have no ties with demons and am working against them. An eerie silence pervaded after my words rang out, both the beasts and the figure of the red woman not saying a thing. The next moment, though, I was surprised to hear the stern voice speak out with a tinge of excitement. No lies in your words. But a human was actually blessed with a Devour class unique skill? Good. This explains your fast progress and power. Alright, this might not be a wasted trip after all. Rumbling began to occur around us as the transparent red woman raised her hands. I watched with rapt attention while repeating the words she said and wrapping my head around them. Behind us, an area of a few miles was lit up as the uneven frozen ground was made visible. A powerful force was compressing the earth as the jagged rocks evened out and the miles around us became flat surfaces. The clear voice that was now tinged with excitement rang out once again. I have a kingdom to focus on, so we will make this quick. An opportunity lies in front of you. In this spiritual land, you can undergo the trial of supremacy. If you are talented enough, rewards you cannot even imagine will be yours. I tried to keep my breathing under control as I passed this ordeal, and it seemed like my life was not under a threat for the time being. My thoughts moved rapidly as I asked, this trial that is normally meant for beasts, what rewards can you gain from it? Well, for starters, this Tier 2 spiritual land will guarantee the champion of the trial of supremacy a safe advancement to the legendary rank.